Chapter 67, Monster, ha ha ha, this young brother's got some fine skills. The sound of footsteps came from the upstairs, and Yishuan saw a youth wearing embroidered clothes coming down the stairs while laughing heartily. I did not expect to actually be able to see such a skilled master here, it's so unexpected. The youth wearing embroidered clothes did not even look at that wailing Brawny who was still conscious and had luckily not died. Yishuan had a surprised look in his eyes. This youth had actually concealed his breath, but after practicing restraining breath technique, Yishuan had become particularly sensitive and immediately found out that this youth was actually a great master of the Xiantian realm. He walked up to the front of Yishuan and introduced himself. Hello, my name is Dai Xiaohua, nice to meet you, what's your name, brother? Dai Xiaohua. Yishuan twitched his eyebrows. A big man like him was actually called wearing small flowers. Well, he seemed like an ignorant person to Yishuan, but he apparently did not feel anything about introducing himself as wearing small flowers, or maybe he had gotten used to it. My name is Yishuan. Yishuan said, and he already knew that this youth was not malicious. After learning the restraining breath technique, Yizaiwan's understanding of other person's breath had progressed by leaps and bounds. It not only could restrain and change the breath, but could also tell whether a person was hostile or not, based on his breath. One could easily disguise the facial expressions, but breath was the only thing that one could never disguise. Haha, after looking for so long, I finally found a decent master. Dai Xiaohua smiled and said, unlike these motley crew. Dai Xiaohua was obviously talking about the warriors sitting in the inn, but surprisingly, although these warriors had angry looks on their faces, but they suppressed their anger and did not say anything. This made Yishuan somewhat curious about Dai Xiaohua. There was a huge difference of martial arts heritage between these warriors and Yishuan. They were simply a group of outlaws and their daily jobs involved struggles between life and death. This had turned them into hot-tempered and irritable people. But, they still didn't say any word on Dai Xiaohua's sarcastic comment. Not of all these warriors were in the Hotian realm, and there were some very strong masters among them, including some who had surpassed the Hotian realm. As if Dai Xiaohua had seen through Yizaiwan's curiosity, he laughed and said, it's nothing. These people do not acknowledge logic but strength. Since they cannot defeat me, they can only endure. This straightforward reply from Dai Xiaohua left a good and deep impression on Yishuan, and this frank youth was far better than those other warriors. Brother Yi, are you going to enlist yourself as the brave warrior of Chao family? Dai Xiaohua asked. Yishuan nodded. Haha, let's join together then. Dai Xiaohua laughed and said. Well, let's go then. Yishuan laughed and was somewhat curious about the background of this youth, because he was so young and was already a Xiantian master, so one could imagine the strength of a master who had taught such a genius. Come on, we go now. Dai Xiaohua said. So late? Yishuan asked. It's not late, because every night, the monster comes to visit this small town. Chao family is anxious and wants to recruit strong masters to protect the town from this danger. Dai Xiaohua said. They did not sit there for too long and immediately headed towards Chao family's manor. Since the entire town was run by Chao family, so the Chao family's manor was located at the center of Kaojiaji town. Dai Xiaohua had come to a few days ago and was familiar with the Kaojiaji town. Although, the color of the sky was gradually getting dark, but Chao family's manor had a brightly lit appearance with countless torches lighting up the night sky. At this time, the door to Chao family's manor was still open and several gatekeepers were guarding the gate. When they saw the two of them coming together, a guard immediately approached and shouted, Who are you? We brothers heard that your Chao family is recruiting warriors, we have especially come to enlist ourselves. Dai Xiaohua approached and said. Then, after a few minutes, two Chao family's executives came out to welcome them and said, This time, many people from our Chao family have been killed by the monster, and I hope that you can help us catch the monster. We Chao family will be highly obliged. These two men were the high-level executives from Chao family. To prevent any more casualties by the recurring attacks of the monster, they had recruited many warriors and had dispersed them in all directions inside the town to protect the people. According to my daily observations, the monster comes into the town almost every day, so tonight we should be able to see a good show. Dai Xiaohua said while lying down on a bench in the garden and holding a weed in the mouth, smiling in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged on a nearby bench and started practicing. He was practicing in the special space and could exit from that space anytime, so he was not worried. As time passed, night grew darker and surrounding sounds also disappeared gradually. People were holding their breath, waiting for the arrival of the monster. Dai Xiaohua did not stay there for long and soon left to search for the whereabouts of that monster. Night grew deeper, and slowly, the whole sky was obscured by the clouds, and became pitch black, but Chao family's mansion still remained as bright as the day. Then suddenly, Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and saw a giant hideous head in front of him. Fire sparks would come out from its breath along with a blow of heat wave. Clang! Almost instantaneously, Yi Shiwen took out his long blade, from the scabbard on his back, and chopped out a dazzling blade light towards the huge head. Dang! The blade light chopped on the giant head and unexpectedly produced a metal clashing sound. The sharp blade light drew a white mark on that giant head, but the monster was frightened from this sudden attack from Yi Shiwen, and suddenly jumped back. Yi Shiwen finally got a look at this giant head. He actually saw a 10-feet-high beast with its 4 claws dug into the ground, covered with numerous red and black-colored dense scales and suffused with a breathtaking coldness with a slight tint of fiery brightness. A terrifying aura firmly locked on Yi Shiwen, but he didn't wait and instantly chopped out a huge crescent bladiki towards that monster. At this time, the warriors present in the nearby locations finally discovered the monster, and started to shout loudly to warn everyone. Monster! Monster! Chapter 68, Fire Lin Beast, Monster, Monster is here. Someone shouted crazily and suddenly the whole Kaojiaji town shook with numerous warriors rushing out with torches in their hands. But this monster was ridiculously strong. Although Yi Zaiwen's blade attack was hasty, but it was still powerful enough to bisect a master of Peak Ho Tian 9th stage, however it still couldn't break the defense of the monster and could only put a scratch on its scales. Yi Zaiwen's sudden attack had scared it and it had jumped back and ran away, because the warriors from Chao family had also started to arrive at the scene. Many warriors started to pursue after that monster, but it was too fast and fled in a blink of an eye. However, during its escape, several warriors had been caught off guard and were torn apart by that monster. No one was able to stop this monster. Phew! Suddenly, a loud shout spread over and Dai Xiaohua's figure flew down from a nearby roof. 100 Stages God Fist. Dai Xiaohua blasted a punch with a terrifying strength which instantly vibrated the air and rushed after the monster. Boom! The massive strength present in Dai Xiaohua's attack directly crashed into the monster's body, bang! The scales on the body of the monster immediately shattered. Dai Xiaohua's attack undoubtedly showed a completely different strength thanks to the condensed Jin Qi of a Xiantian 2nd stage master. The monster was in a severe pain inflicted by this attack and wanted to stop and wreak havoc on the perpetrators, but it knew that Dai Xiaohua was not someone it could easily take on. It immediately picked up speed and taking advantage of the dark night sky, it immediately fled away. It looked as if a red and black flame was passing gently but also swiftly across the sky. Dai Xiaohua chased after it, but after a while, it had started to slowly pull away and leave him behind. He was tyrannically powerful compared to this monster, especially his fist technique was incredibly powerful, but that was not the case with his agility skill. Although, he had practiced a very powerful agility technique but it had showed its inferiority at this critical time. The so-called law of biting off more than one could chew. Dai Xiaohua had practiced a very powerful Xiantian-level fist technique to a profound realm, and he had spent most of his time on practicing 100 stages God Fist, and by spending less time on practicing his agility technique, his agility skill had become inferior. Also, the speed of this monster was at a terrifying level and most people could only see red and black shadows flying at an insane speed. Dai Xiaohua bitterly stopped. Unfortunately, at that time, he was far away from the monster, otherwise he had the confidence of stopping it. At this time, all of a sudden, accompanied with a gust of wind and a sharp whistling sound, a blurred figure instantly crossed Dai Xiaohua and chased after the monster. Dai Xiaohua immediately recognized that this figure undoubtedly belonged to Yi Shiwen, whose stature was smoothly and elegantly traversing while constantly flashing towards that monster. Dai Xiaohua could not help but be secretly surprised at Yi Zaiwen's amazing agility skill. Biting off more than one could chew was only a truth for other people, but this logic didn't apply on Yi Shiwen, because, even geniuses needed several years to completely master a martial art. But what about Yi Shiwen? For Yi Shiwen, so long as there were enough spirit stones, he would be able to fully master any martial arts in a very short amount of time. This was the reason why both his blade and agility skills were exceptionally strong. After only a few minutes of pursuit, Yi Shiwen had already left Kaojiaji town behind, and while chasing after the monster, he had finally entered the mountain forest. "Don't run away like a coward, stay behind and fight with me," Yi Shiwen shouted, and his blade chopped out a bright blade light which shone like a faint moonlight and instantly illuminated the entire forest, while rushing towards the monster. Roar! The monster was anxious, and with a loud roar, its stature transversely shifted sideways with an incredible speed and dodged Yi Zaiwen's Daoqi. The monster turned around and stared fiercely at Yi Shiwen. Its two lantern-sized eyes flashed ominously and were firmly locked on Yi Shiwen. Then it lifted its face up towards the sky and roared loudly. An ominous aura started to overflow from its body and openly disseminate everywhere. Yi Shiwen noticed that it was actually a Xiantian-level demon beast, and he didn't know about its species. The monster opened its big mouth, blowing a foul smell on Yi Zaiwen's face, followed by a surge of blue flames coming out of its mouth that instantly burned through the air and soared towards Yi Shiwen to sear him. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen suddenly jumped up high in the sky, directly over the monster, and easily dodged those blue flames. Roar! The monster raised its head and opened up its big mouth to bite. "You are courting death." Yi Zaiwen's long blade instantly chopped out a dazzling blade light that looked as if the stars were falling from the sky, and it severely cut into the body of that monster. Missing Moon Beheader. The strength of 3 dragons completely unleashed, and Yi Zaiwen's total strength surpassed the terrifying force of 10,000 jin and instantly concentrated on a single point of attack. Bang! With a sound of metal clashing, Yi Zaiwen's blade attack, containing massive strength of 3 dragons, directly clashed into the monster's body and sent it rolling down on the ground, but it immediately stood up the very next instant. Yi Shiwen was flabbergasted because the defensive strength of its scales was unbelievably terrifying. Demon beasts generally held the advantage of possessing tough bodies compared to humans, but this extent of toughness was definitely rare. Yi Zaiwen's most powerful blade attack, endowed with the strength of 3 dragons, had actually just chipped a few pieces of the scales on its body. It could be said that this monster had the strongest defense among all of the demon beasts that Yi Shiwen had seen so far in his lifetime. It was such a terrifying demon beast that even attacks from a master of the Xiantian first stage couldn't break its defense, and this was the reason why Chao family could only leave this monster running amok. Yi Shiwen had also tried out its strength and confirmed that it had already reached the peak of Xiantian first stage, and even a master of peak Xiantian first stage was not its match and would only die if tried to fight with it head-on. The strength of this monster was comparable to that of a master of Xiantian second stage. So, even an anomaly like Yi Shiwen, whose strength was equivalent to that of a master of Xiantian second stage, could only fight with it on equal terms. However, it was impossible for him to defeat it at his current strength. After taking an attack from Yi Zaiwen's blade, the monster suffered small injuries and was in pain. It had realized that dealing with Yi Shiwen would not be easy. The explosive strength in its limbs burst out, and it suddenly leaped up and dashed into the mountain forest at an insane speed. It had actually become even faster than before. Yi Shiwen couldn't reach its insane speed, and could only give up. Yi Shiwen walked back along the same route. At this time, Kaojiaji town was already brightly lit, because the sudden attack of monster had alerted everyone, and people could be seen walking around inside the small town. Many people had gathered at the entrance of Chao family's manor and a lot more had rushed there to see Yi Xuan and had already encircled him. "Brother Yi, what happened? Did you catch up to that monster?" Dai Xiaohua asked. "No, it got away." Yi Xuan did not want to reveal too many details of his fight with the monster. "It's a pity because that was actually a fire lin beast. I did not expect to actually see a fire lin beast here," Dai Xiaohua said. Chapter 69, Strange, it's a pity because that was definitely the fire lin beast. I actually did not expect to see a fire lin beast here, Dai Xiaohua said. Fire lin beast, that monster was a fire lin beast? No wonder my attacks didn't work on it. Its scales are way too hard and I think even those famous precious armors are nothing in comparison. If only I could get those scales to make armor out of them, then I won't have to fear for my safety anymore. Those warriors were excited and still discussing about how Fire Lin Beast had been unable to wreak havoc like earlier and had been easily driven out this time. But, right now, Yi Xuan was recalling the information he had about Fire Lin Beast in his mind. Fire Lin Beast was a very famous and unique type of demon beast that would take birth in a magma pool and could only survive an extremely hot place during its birth. There were rumors that Fire Lin Beast contained the blood of ancient Fire Qilin Beast in its body, but this was only a rumor and no one knew whether this was true or false. After all, like dragons, unicorns were also only a legend. Just like wyverns were an inferior species of ancient dragons, Fire Lin Beast was rumored to be an inferior species of ancient Fire Qilin species and contained their blood. Adults of Fire Lin Beast species were able to surpass the Xiantian realm, so it could be deduced from its cultivation level, that the said monster of Kaojiaji town, that was outrageously powerful and had been wreaking havoc for all this time, was actually not an adult Fire Lin Beast, and perhaps had taken birth not long ago. Directly born with its cultivation level in the Xiantian realm? Yi Xuan had mixed feelings after hearing this and sighed, because with respect to these unique demon beasts, the human race was really weak. Except for the wisdom, there was nothing else which could support the fact that humans were stronger than these unique beasts, but even so, humans still occupied the major areas of Zhenwujia world and were also its true leaders. Today, I would like to thank all of you for your efforts. Because of your presence here, we were able to scare away that Fire Lin Beast, and this incident did not end up in a tragedy. At this time, a handsome middle-aged man came out from the Chao family's mansion and said while cupping one hand into the other across the chest. "Lord is so polite. There is no need to stand on ceremonies, it's our job." This man was actually the Lord of Chao family, named Chao Jinbiao. Anyway, today, our Chao family escaped unharmed and the credit for that goes to all of you, so, I will personally make sure to generously reward each and every one of you. Chao Jinbiao said. Tomorrow, our Chao family will start an operation to eliminate that Fire Lin Beast and I wish for all of you to join us in this operation. Chao Jinbiao said. No problem. Of course, we will participate in this operation. Many warriors laughed and immediately accepted the proposal of Chao Jinbiao to go and eliminate the Fire Lin Beast. The beast had been driven away so easily and this had increased their confidence. After all, even though a few people had died, but the Fire Lin Beast had to actually flee for its life. Furthermore, a mere Hotian realm expert like Yi Xuan had been able to chase after it and driven it away. However, Yi Xuan was not so optimistic, because just now, he actually sensed that the cultivation level of Chao Jinbiao was already in the Xiantian realm. Although, he had camouflaged his breath quite well, but he had accidentally leaked a very small amount of his breath and that had been instantly sensed by Yi Xuan. Think of breath like an aura which is directly proportional to one's cultivation level. After practicing the restraining breath technique, Yi Xuan had become very sensitive to the aura of other people and by virtue of a person's aura, he had been able to sense their cultivation level and strength. And Chao Jinbiao turned out to be a Xiantian master but he seemed injured, because his aura was very unstable when Yi Xuan had sensed it. But even a wounded Xiantian master like Chao Jinbiao would not be unable to retaliate if a Fire Lin Beast was wreaking havoc and killing members of his family. Moreover, this Fire Lin Beast had particularly attacked the members of Chao family in the past, so there was definitely an inside story behind this. Two heroes, I thank you for driving away that fire Lin beast this time. Chao Jinbiao said. He had certainly seen how Dai Xiaohua and Yi Shuwen had scared away the fire Lin beast, and one of them was only a master of Ho Tian realm and was simply not strong enough to defeat a fire Lin beast. Lord is so polite. Dai Xiaohua waved his hands and said as if he did not care. You're welcome. Yi Shuwen said. Chao Jinbiao saw that the two of them had started to talk to each other. He did not stay there for too long, and after talking for a while with other warriors, he finally left. Hey, I can't believe that it really was the fire Lin beast. Dai Xiaohua chuckled and said after he saw Chao Jinbiao leaving. And there's also that blue flaming flower. Gee, I am afraid it's going to get very lively around here. Dai Xiaohua excitedly said. Didn't I say that blue flaming flower really exists? And the appearance of fire Lin beast has confirmed my anticipation. I once read a record in a book and it said that fire Lin beast was actually associated with the treasure, blue flaming flower. Shortly after the birth of a fire Lin beast's cub, a blue flaming flower would mature on the place of its birth, and so long as the fire Lin beast cub swallowed this flower, it would be able to have step-by-step growth from infancy to adulthood. Growing period. Yi Shuwen frowned. An infant fire Lin beast had been so difficult to deal with, not to mention, it was still in the growth period and no one could guess about the extent of its growth once it reached adulthood. Yi Shuwen felt in his heart that fortunately, it was not in the adulthood right now, otherwise, the only option left for them would be either to escape or face massacre at the hands of this unique demon beast that contained the blood of ancient fire Qilin beast, making it too formidable to deal with. Hey, I'm going to get ready, because it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. Dai Xiaohua cupped his hand into the other across his chest and said, Brother Yi, I have things to do, so I will go ahead first. Looking at the departing figure of Dai Xiaohua, Yi Shuwen did not stay in the Chao family manor for too long and returned back to the inn to start practicing. Yi Shuwen always felt that there was something strange here, that things were not as simple as he had previously thought, and it turned that he was right. Even an infant fire Lin beast was already at the peak of Xiantian first stage and was powerful enough to make everyone run for their lives, and could even kill some Xiantian second stage masters as well. After the growth period of fire Lin beast would complete, it would be difficult to describe how formidable it would become in its adulthood. It could be said that this whole matter had become quite scary. However, no matter what, to enhance one's strength, dealing with all the troubles was the way of the king. Night passed in a blink of an eye and Yi Shuwen had fully concentrated on practicing, but this night had become a sleepless night for many experts, and the reason behind this was the identity of that monster, being revealed as the formidable fire Lin beast. The existence of fire Lin beast and blue flaming fire was enough to attract the attention of many experts. After practicing all night, Yi Shuwen finally stopped and went downstairs only to find it crowded with many new warriors, and compared to the warriors he had seen yesterday, this crowd consisted of a lot of stronger experts of Xiantian realm. All of them were covered with dust, and it seemed that they had apparently rushed to the Kaojiaji town after hearing about the fire Lin beast and blue flaming flower. Chapter 70, Rising Winds. The entire inn was filled with a tense atmosphere. Did you hear that? I heard that even Tianhui City's city guard government has dispatched an expert, and I also heard that a few decades ago, that expert was famous by the name of Chen Taizhou in the nearby areas. How was he dispatched? Didn't the rumors say that Chen Taizhou is already dead? Several years ago, Chen Taizhou was a famous Xiantian master in this area, but later, rumors spread out that he died. I did not expect that he would actually conceal himself and work for city guard government. Furthermore, last night, someone saw that Shaoyang sect's young master, Wu Shaoyang, has also entered the town and has obviously also come for the fire Lin beast. Gee, with the arrival of so many Xiantian masters, I am afraid it's going to be a lot of fun. Yesterday I did not know, but a big personality was present among us. Everyone knows of the Dai family, right? Gee, yesterday, the most powerful expert of the current generation of Dai family, Dai Xiaohua, displayed a superb performance of 100 stages God Fist to a profound level and scared away that fire Lin beast. Yes, I also heard that a young man went out alone to kill the Fire Lin beast and came back unharmed. Gee, he must also be a famous master. A discussion was open inside the inn and Yi Shiwen was quietly having breakfast in a corner. No one knew that Yi Shiwen was the young man in their discussions, who had alone chased after the Fire Lin beast and had come back alive. But, Yi Shiwen had accidentally heard and was surprised to find out that Dai Xiaohua was actually a person of the famous Dai family. Dai family had a well-known influence in the nearby regions and was backed by one of the four great sects of Great Yu State, Lu Yuncheng. It had a rather special influence among the four great sects, and not just because it contained a wide range of martial arts, but also because the ancestors of Lu Yuncheng Lord's family had founded the Great Yu Empire alongside the first emperor. Also, because of the relationship between the teachings of their forefathers, among the four great sects, Lu Yuncheng was most intimate with the imperial family. Basically, it could be said that they were deeply interrelated with the royal family. Dai family was a branch of Lu Yuncheng and its huge influence had spread throughout the Great Yu State like the other three respected families, backed by Lu Yuncheng. Also, an ancestor of Dai family was also one of the four efficient subordinates of Lu Yuncheng and had served under the king during the foundation of the empire. Yesterday, Yi Shiwen could have guessed about Dai Xiaohua's background, but his attention was riveted on the Fire Lin beast. And, Dai Xiaohua had also made very good impression on him, and had proved himself worthy of a close friendship, so he didn't think too much about this matter. But even so, it was nothing, and was he not also the strongest disciple in the younger generation of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan school? This time, no matter what, he must fight and strive on, and during the chaos caused by so many powerful masters, he might have a chance to score a victory. After a while later, a warrior of the Chao family entered the inn and walked straight to the front of Yi Shiwen and said, "Master Yi, our Chao family's lord has especially sent me to invite you for today's operation of elimination of monster. Are you ready?" N. Yi Shiwen nodded. "Then please come with me." Yi Shiwen followed the warrior of Chao family out of the inn, and at this time, a buzzing sound of an intense discussion broke out in the inn. Ah, he was that young man, named Yi Shiwen, who chased alone after the Fire Lin beast last night. I never imagined him to be so skinny. Stupid, a warrior must not be judged by his appearance. If strength was decided by the physique of a master, then all of the masters would have Iron Tower-like physiques. Yes, yesterday I saw an idiot provoking Yi Shiwen, but instead he got nailed to the wall with a chopstick. Where does this Yi Shiwen come from? Don't you know? At this time, a traveling merchant opened his mouth and said, "This Yi Shiwen is this year's peerless genius from Yuan School." A genius from Yuan School? That's not right, although Yuan School is somewhat far from here, but I know of Yifeng, Zhangyang et al., but why have I never heard of Yi Shiwen before? A knowledgeable man asked. You do not know about it? The traveling merchant said with a smug look on his face, that Yi Shiwen is a rising genius of Yuan School. He won the Inner Disciples competition and easily became a champion of Yuan School's inner sect. After winning the championship, he again stole the spotlight in the Core Disciples competition by beheading a Xiantian master. Right now, he is recognized as Yuan School's strongest top disciple in the younger generation. Yi Shiwen did not know that the whole inn had started to talk about his achievements. He followed the Chao family's warrior and soon arrived at the manor of Chao family. At this time, the manor was already crowded with experts and all of them were exuding a dangerous aura. However soon, two people caught his attention, and at a corner, an old man was standing under the tree shade, with a cold look on his face, and right then, Yi Shiwen also noticed his pitch-black iron-like hands. Yi Shiwen immediately knew that this guy should be Qin Taizhou. Although he seemed to be standing still and alone, but no one was daring to approach him because he seemed more like a beast than a martial artist. On the other side, there was an entirely different scene. A youth clad in red robe, holding a sword in his hand, was standing with a smile on his face while surrounded by a multitude of warriors, trying to get close to him. After all, although the influence of Shaoyang sect was not comparable to Yuan School, Dai family and other great sects, But it was still not a small power because 3 Xiantian masters had assumed personal command over the Shaoyang sect, and it had definitely a powerful influence in this neighborhood that couldn't be ignored. Yi Xuan also found that the strength level of these warriors was obviously more than the warriors of Qingfeng Mountain area and was really closer to the warriors found in the central regions of Great Yu State. Brother Yi. At this time, the voice of Dai Xiaohua entered Yi Ziwen's ears. He turned to look and actually saw Dai Xiaohua running towards him. I never thought that Brother Yi was actually a brilliant student of Yi Yuan School. You tried to conceal this from me and I feel bitter about it. When did you become so bashful? You and I became good friends without worrying about our background identity and status. Yi Xuan said with a smile. Ha ha ha, exactly, you said well. Looked pleasing to the eyes of each other, then you and I became good friends, without worrying about our background identity and status. Dai Xiaohua laughed and said. Gentlemen. Chapter 71, To Hit with Hands or Fists, Gentlemen. At this time, the lord of Chao family, Chao Jinbiao, came out and cupped one hand in the other across his chest and said, Today, you all have accepted our invitation and it is great honor for our small town. Lord Chao, don't mention it, because today we have come for the matter related to the Fire Lin beast. A warrior said. Everyone nodded, though this was an operation initiated by the Chao family, but if there were no Fire Lin beast and blue flaming flower in the picture, then who would have come at Chao family's invitation? Good, this monster extermination operation will now officially begin. Everyone please follow us. Chao Jinbiao did not speak much and immediately began the operation. Led by the members of Chao family, the large team of mighty warriors headed towards the place where the underground magma pool was located. Yi Xuan and Dai Xiaohua were also present in the crowd and they soon went out of the town. All of these warriors were fast and within half an hour, they arrived under a hillside. This hillside was not high, only about 56 meters, but there was a big hole on its top and one could see a very dark bottomless place from above. The magma pool was present beneath it. Yi Xuan quickly followed the crowd into the cave. After entering the cave, they suddenly felt a heat wave blowing and could even hear the sound of lava rolling and boiling inside cave, accompanied with the bubbling sound. Yi Xuan reckoned that maybe this magma pool had not formed by an active volcano, but it was hard to say. After all, this could only be calculated based on thousands of years of volcanic action. But now, it seemed to have been formed from a volcano, and that must have happened a very long time ago. When the team went deeper into the cave, the temperature of the ground started to increase gradually and some of the warriors had to wrap their feet with Jinqi, otherwise the heat would have burnt their feet. It was getting darker inside the cave, but everyone here was an expert and could clearly see in just a little bit of light. Moreover, as they were approaching the magma pool, the cave had gradually started to illuminate with red light. The team continued to walk in the direction from where the red light was coming, and only after a while they saw a huge magma pool, filled with rolling and bubbling red-hot magma. Everyone clearly saw that right at the center of the magma pool, there was a single blue flaming lotus, and seemed to be camouflaged with its color similar to the color of the surrounding magma. People could not help but be secretly amazed. They never expected to actually see a flower growing in the magma, and it could survive under such a high temperature. That was definitely not ordinary. They saw the entirely crimson-colored blue flaming lotus, and they also clearly saw that it contained lotus seeds as well. Ha! It's actually the blue flaming lotus. A warrior laughed and said. After seeing the flower, the warrior picked up a huge rock and suddenly threw it into the magma pool. Splash! The rock fell into the magma, and that warrior immediately jumped and stepped on that huge rock, and without waiting even for an instant, he suddenly leaped again towards the blue flaming lotus to plunder it. Everyone saw that once that warrior tried to grasp the blue flaming lotus in his hand, he started screaming over and over while his hands had instantly burnt to a terrifying extent. His body fiddled, and as there nothing to support his falling body, he fell directly into the magma and screamed pitifully before completely melting. He really was courting death. Many of the warriors who had fortunately not rushed like him, said with a look of disdain on their faces. Yi Xuan frowned at this troublesome situation. The blue flaming lotus was completed, surrounded by red-hot magma, and there were no places to step over to approach it, and looking at the scary level of temperature of the magma, even a foot, properly wrapped in reinforced Jinqi, would instantly melt and disappear once stepped into the magma, which was absolutely terrifying. Let me try. At this time, the young master of Shaoyang sect, Wu Shaoyang, shouted loudly and instantly threw a red double-edged sword which flew out skimming over the magma pool, and Wu Shaoyang immediately flew up, and as lithe as the swallow, he descended over his sword and rushed towards the blue flaming lotus to snatch it. Shwa! The treasured sword passed swiftly over the blue flaming lotus and instantly cut down the entire flower while flying vigorously through the air, but at this time, when he stretched out his hands to firmly hold the blue flaming lotus, it started to emit buzzing sound after coming in contact with his hands. The ultra-high temperature had started to melt his Jinqi, though fortunately, he was already a master of the Xiantian realm, and his Xiantian Jinqi was far more powerful than the Hotian Jinqi. If a Hotian realm warrior had held this lotus in his hand, then it would have instantly corroded his Jinqi and burnt his hand. Wu Shaoyang soon flew skimming over the magma pool to the other side, when at this time he heard a shrill piercing sound and saw a huge rock flying towards him at a lightning speed. Bang! Wu Shaoyang struggled to twist his body in the midair and dodged the rock, which then heavily crashed into the side of the cliff and dug a big hole into it. Chen Taizhou, you old bastard! How dare you sneak an attack on me? Wu Shaoyang turned around to look and noticed that it was Chen Taizhou who had played this dirty trick on him. Chen Taizhou sneered, you better put down the blue flaming lotus. It is not the kind of thing that your Shaoyang sect should meddle with. Wu Shaoyang's complexion got unsightly and he stared fiercely at the Chen Taizhou and said, if I say no, then your father will lose a son, so I advise you to be little sensible. Years ago, I made a living by traveling around the country when you were just born. Chen Taizhou bluntly said. Old fool, you want to take advantage of your own seniority. So what if you have practiced for decades? Just you wait and see how I cut you today. Wu Shaoyang had become enraged by Chen Taizhou's words. You can try. Chen Taizhou sneered and rushed towards Wu Shaoyang. Old stuff, just drop dead already. Wu Shaoyang struck his sword and a terrifying Jianqi instantly rushed out towards Chen Taizhou. Boom! Chen Taizhou used his hands to directly block and scatter the incoming Jianqi, but at this time, his figure stagnated and it seemed as if he would fall into the magma. He immediately shot his palm, releasing a terrifying Qijin towards the magma. With the help of the opposite reaction force of this attack, his body suddenly bounced back to go up, and like an eagle, he instantly rushed towards Wu Shaoyang. Even if they had actually come for blue flaming lotus, but this hitting with hands or fists began too quickly, and even the shadow of the fire Lin beast is nowhere to be seen. Dai Xiaohua said with disdain. Chapter 72, Chao Family's Trap Fire Lin Beast. Yi Xuan shook his head because none of these warriors had really come to help Chao family in exterminating this beast. Almost all had come for the blue flaming lotus, and knowing the benefits of this rare treasure, even a devil would be willing to come as well. As a result of battling with Chen Taizhou, Wu Shaoyang had no other choice left but to obediently put down the blue flaming lotus. Snatch the blue flaming lotus. Kill. Seeing the fight of Wu Shaoyang and Chen Taizhou, other warriors suddenly broke out all of a sudden, because they had faced a sudden outbreak of greed in their hearts for the blue flaming lotus. Fighting, killing, all of a sudden, a lot of warriors had already died. Undoubtedly, the greed had manifested itself inside the hearts of these warriors. The aisle to the magma pool was too narrow, and because of that, a lot of warriors had directly fallen into the magma pool and perished instantly. Both Yi Xuan and Dai Xiaohua were not in a rush like those other warriors, because to them, these people were nothing more than a motley crew and were definitely not a cause of concern, even though some Xiantian masters were also present among these warriors. But, for these two, their only possible opponents could be Chen Taizhou and Wu Shaoyang, the two Xiantian masters, who were battling each other at the moment. Of course, there was also Chao Jinbiao, the lord of Keojiaji town, and Yi Xuan had not forgotten that Chao Jinbiao was also a powerful Xiantian master, although injured at the moment. Then suddenly, Yi Shuan discovered that Chao Jinbiao, who should have been with his team in the middle, had actually disappeared, and this discovery had suddenly made him tensed and surprised at the same time. Chao Jinbiao has disappeared. Yi Shuan immediately informed Dai Xiaohua. What? Don't tell me he got killed by some warrior. Dai Xiaohua said. No, he disappeared only a moment ago, and I also can't see the members of Chao family. Yi Shuan said. After listening to what Yi Shuan had just said, Dai Xiaohua also reacted immediately, because it was really true that the members of Chao family, who were present here only a moment ago, had suddenly disappeared. This is a problem. Dai Xiaohua frowned and said, because the Chao family had used this chaotic situation to their advantage. Confusion, chaos. The crowd of warriors had already rushed to the other side of the magma pool, leaving only Dai Xiaohua and Yi Shuan behind. Yi Shuan saw a man rushing to grab the blue flaming lotus, but that man was shot by many concealed weapons, turning his body look like that of a hedgehog. However, before long, everyone started fighting with each other while striving to be first and fearing to be last. When Yi Shuan was trying to think about his next course of action, suddenly, the whole magma boiled up and a huge shadow jumped out from the magma and swooped down towards the group of warriors, who were fighting with each other until now, and several warriors didn't have enough time to dodge and were instantly killed. Fire Lin Beast. Everyone was stunned after the sudden appearance of Fire Lin Beast. 100 Stages God Fist. Dai Xiaohua shouted and flew towards the beast. His fierce punch shot out the terrifying Quan Jin. Boom! The Quan Jin fiercely collided with the body of Fire Lin Beast, but its grandiose stature moved only a bit. Yi Shuan also didn't wait and immediately flew across the entire magma pool, then took out his blade and severely chopped out towards the Fire Lin Beast. Fire Lin Beast screamed and several of its scales immediately shattered. Fire Lin Beast did not stop, but it immediately pounced towards the blue flaming flower. You beast! Wu Xiaoyang shouted loudly and his sword danced out, releasing a long thick sword key which instantly plugged into the front of the Fire Lin Beast. Chen Taizhou also didn't wait and his fist rumbled, producing an air-crackling sound, and the profound skill of Chen Taizhou directly struck the body of Fire Lin Beast, and it bellowed and rolled to the side. But the Fire Lin Beast did not give up. It immediately stood up and rolled to the side of Blue Flaming Lotus and bit off a major part of the lotus and swallowed it. You filthy beast! At this time, the people were angry, seeing that the Fire Lin Beast had actually eaten half of the Blue Flaming Lotus. The Fire Lin Beast lifted its face upward and gave out a loud roar and rushed towards a group of Hotian-level warriors, and almost in an instant, these Hotian-level warriors had been totally obliterated. Kill, ha ha ha! Kill them for me. At this time, everyone heard a loud battle cry coming from a distant place, but this voice was familiar to Yi Shuan. Yes. It was the voice of Chao Jinbiao, Lord of Keojiaji Town. Everyone saw Chao Jinbiao, and two other experts walking with him towards the magma pool from far away. These two experts were actually Xiantian level masters. One was a middle-aged man who looked smaller than Chao Jinbiao and another was a skinny old man. Yi Shuan immediately recognized these two experts, as someone from the Chao family had mentioned about them earlier to Yi Shuan. These two were the major pillars that supported the Chao family on their shoulders. The middle-aged man was the younger brother Chao Jinbiao, called Chao Jinshui, while the old man was an elder of Keojiaji town, called Chao Xing. No one had expected to find so many Xiantian masters in a small town like Keojiaji. Lord Chao, what is the meaning of this? Chen Taizhou asked. Ha ha ha, of course, this is to kill you all. Today, you all must die. A warrior of Chao family laughed and said. You dare to set me up, are you not afraid of our punitive army? Chen Taizhou said in a cold voice. Do you think you can escape? You are only the first wave of Xiantian masters that we have attracted so far, and then later, more will come, and after beheading all of the Xiantian masters of the nearby areas, our Chao family will gain the biggest influence in this locality. A warrior of the Chao family said, and who will know that we were behind this? All they will know that, you all died at the hands of the Fire Lin beast. So, this Fire Lin beast, Dai Zaiwa's complexion immediately paled. Yes, so you finally realized. In order to subdue this beast, we had to put a lot of efforts. The warrior laughed and said. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood. This explained why Chao Jinbio's breath was unstable. So, he had actually been injured while taming this Fire Lin beast. In other words, Chao family really wanted to attract great masters of Shaoyang sect and Tianhui town, while Yi Shiwen as well as Dai Xiaohua were also their targets. You talk too much. Chao Jinshui shouted and said, kill them all, and once we are done with them, our Chao family would gain the top influence in this area. Kill! Kill! Chao family's men gave out a battle cry, while the complexion of those who had been invited by the Chao family had considerably paled, but now, this had become a matter of life and death for them, and they immediately clashed with the members of the Chao family and a bloody war started in the cave. Yi Shiwen suddenly moved quickly and in an instant, he was next to the blue flaming lotus. He bent down and caught the root of the blue flaming lotus, although the major part of the lotus had been eaten by the Fire Lin beast, but even just the root was very beneficial. But before Yi Shiwen could even think, a huge shadow leaped towards him and mercilessly hit Yi Shiwen, and sent him flying. Splash! Yi Shiwen fell into the magma pool. Chapter 73, Breaking Through to the Xiantian Realm, Brother Yi. Dai Xiaohua said anxiously, you filthy beast. Dai Xiaohua had become extremely furious when he saw Yi Shiwen being pushed into the magma pool, without any chance to dodge an attack from the Fire Lin beast. He furiously shot out 100 stages God Fist at the beast and it suddenly screamed. His Quan Jin broke through the layers of scales and blasted into its body under the scales. Dai Zaiwa's Xiantian level strength had reached its peak, caused by his anger for the beast, and the tyrannical power of his fist technique had truly manifested itself. However, at this time, Dai Xiaohua was unable to chase and kill the Fire Lin beast, because Chao Jinbiao and his family had started an onslaught on them, and Lord Chao Jinbiao was a terrifying Xiantian master, so Dai Xiaohua had to pay attention to them as well. 3 Xiantian masters of the Chao family were already well prepared to obstruct Dai Xiaohua, Chen Taizhou, and Wu Xiaoyang. But Dai Xiaohua was not afraid of these 3 Xiantian masters of the Chao family, but at present, the most terrifying was the fact that Fire Lin beast had already swallowed a major part of the blue flaming lotus and had now entered into transformation period. If this situation dragged on a little longer and the beast was not killed before the completion of its transformation, then no one would survive. The complexion of Dai Xiaohua, Chen Taizhou, and Wu Xiaoyang had suddenly paled because they never thought that Chao family would actually prepare such a vicious trap. When I go out, I will let my father take care of you Chao family bastards. Wu Xiaoyang gritted his teeth and said in a cold voice. Well, that is if you get a chance to go out. Wu Xiaoyang's opponent Chao Jinshui sneered and said. At the same time, the aura of Fire Lin beast had started to increase rapidly, and with a loud bang, it suddenly broke through the peak of Xiantian first stage and entered into the Xiantian second stage. However, its aura continued to rise and didn't stop. Run, we will make a run for it, and as long as there is one of us who manages to escape from this massacre, Chao family will be exterminated. Chen Taizhou finally shouted these words to collaborate with the 2 Xiantian masters, Dai Xiaohua and Wu Xiaoyang. As for those other warriors, they were like ants in his eyes and he simply did not care about them. Run, where will you run to? Chao Jinbiao laughed and said. The strength of the Fire Lin beast had already increased dramatically. Its loud roars were echoing in the cave and its eyes had become blood red, full of blood and violence, and its gigantic body suddenly leaped towards Chen Taizhou. After entering into the Xiantian second stage, the strength of the Fire Lin beast had increased to a terrifying level, and with just a swoop, it had knocked down Chen Taizhou on the ground. Die, you filthy beast! Chen Taizhou shouted loudly, and his pitch-black palm instantly shot out, containing a terrifying strength, which caused a loud air explosion. Bang! The Fire Lin beast directly lifted up its claw and fiercely stepped upon his hand. Kara! With a sound of breaking bones, the bones inside Chen Tai's house hand immediately shattered after the Fire Lin beast had directly stepped on his hand. Chen Tai's ho screamed in a pitiful voice because its foot was extremely heavy. The beast again stepped on his breastbone and smashed it. Ah! Chen Tai's ho screamed, but right then, a raging fire suddenly discharged out from the body of Fire Lin beast and instantly corroded the Xiantian Jin Qi that was wrapped around his body, and then burnt him to cinders. Ha ha ha, today, no one's going anywhere. Chao Xing and the Fire Lin beast rushed towards Wu Xiaoyang and Dai Xiaohua respectively. Suddenly, the whole magma pool began to boil up and an incredibly terrifying aura flushed out of the magma pool and an innumerable influx of frenzied lingqi formed a huge bubble in the magma. The complexion of all the Xiantian masters present there immediately turned pale. They were all familiar with this scene because this was a breakthrough into the Xiantian realm. The complexion of the people from Chao family especially became pale, because they couldn't comprehend that how could someone break through to the Xiantian realm inside the magma. Dai Xiaohua was delighted, and he seemed to have understood what was happening. Hurry up, kill them all. Chao Jinbiao immediately shouted. Boom! Before they could start the massacre, a loud explosion sound came from the magma, and a large amount of magma spattered in all directions. Except the Fire Lin beast, everyone else quickly used all their might to jump back and escape from the flying magma. They absolutely could not afford to touch it, otherwise, they would be roasted alive. A figure covered in red-hot magma jumped out from the magma, and the first one to react was the Fire Lin beast, which immediately pounced towards that figure with its blood-red eyes, full of hatred, looking at that figure. But, the Fire Lin beast actually saw an incomparably radiant red-hot long blade flashing. The long blade instantly pierced through the air and maliciously chopped into its body. Bang! The whole cave echoed with a loud sound of metal clash, and in the very next instant, the Fire Lin beast screamed and its gigantic body directly flew far away by this blade attack. There was huge crack on the red scales covering its body and the blood was gushing out of the wound. This was the first time someone had cut open its scales to this extent. People were giving dumbfounded looks to that person's figure standing in the midair. They couldn't believe their eyes that in an instant, the tables had turned in their favor and the beast on which the Chao family was putting its bet had actually been injured and sent flying by a single blade attack. It was hard for people to accept this favorable turn of events in such a short time. At this time, the shadow descended from the sky and landed on one side of the magma pool. Brother Yi, you're all right. Dai Xiaohua said with a look of surprise on his face. Wu Xiaoyang was also surprised and looked at Yi Shiwen, although he and Yi Shiwen were unfamiliar, but this time, the unexpected appearance of Yi Shiwen was more like reinforcement to their side. Yi Shiwen nodded towards the two men, with a blade in his hand and stared coldly towards the people of Chao family. For Yi Shiwen, only he himself knew about the life and death experience that he had just gone through, and his survival could be said as a narrow escape. Falling into magma pool implied certain death. The Houtianjin Qi simply couldn't stop the invasion of magma, and even Xiantianjin Qi would burn up quickly, so there was no way to continue to resist it. So, when he had fallen into the magma, he decided to swallow the root of blue flaming lotus at this critical moment, and along with it, he also took out the Xiantian pellet and began to forcefully impact on his inner state in order to enter into the Xiantian realm. Only after the impact to his innate state, an endless amount of Xiantianjin Qi generated inside his body and he was able to escape. Yi Shiwen had no other ways to escape from the magma, and without a breakthrough, he would have burned inside the magma, but fortunately, heavens would not fail a man. Although he had only swallowed the root of blue flaming lotus, but his body had still gained the fire spirit characteristics. His anti-fire resistance had greatly enhanced, and this was the reason why the magma had not caused any injuries to his body and he had been able to stay in the magma for so long, without getting burnt. Moreover, he also regarded this as a blessing in disguise, because from now on, flames would not be able to burn him due to greatly increased resistance to fire. Also, he would be able to practice a fire attribute power technique and would gain twice the result with half the effort. This was the motive that had attracted all the warriors to come here. Chapter 74, all killed. This was the most important characteristic of Blue Flaming Lotus that had attracted all the warriors to rush here. Because of the strong fire-resistant properties of the Blue Flaming Lotus, Yishuan had been able to break through to the Xiantian realm while he was still inside the magma pool. Inside the magma, Yishuan simply did not have any time to think, and his only chance of survival relied on having a breakthrough as soon as possible. After taking the Xiantian pellet, Yishuan had been able to have a quick and successful breakthrough compared to the other masters, and this could be described as a narrow escape. When he had fallen into the magma pool, if his Xiantian Jinqi had been completely consumed even a moment before he actually swallowed the Blue Flaming Lotus, then he would have instantly burned in the magma before gaining the fire-resistant ability from the lotus. However, after experiencing a narrow escape from death, it was not so that he didn't get any benefits from this. In his body, 50% of the Houtian Jinqi had transformed into Xiantian Jinqi, and this transformation was comparable to the degree of transformation attained by ordinary experts of the Xiantian third stage. Of course, his current transformation was still not comparable to the elite masters of Xiantian third stage who had already transformed 60% of their Jinqi into Xiantian Jinqi. After entering into the Xiantian realm, Yi Zaiwen's strength had also reached all the way up to the strength of 11 dragons. Also, speaking of the martial arts techniques, although he knew a lot of Xiantian-level martial arts techniques, but had only mastered to an extent of advanced power technique, and had only scratched the surface of the real extent related to the Xiantian power techniques. It could be said that he had obtained a superficial knowledge, as the insights, about these Xiantian power techniques. Although 50% of his Jinqi had already transformed into Xiantian Jinqi, but there was still a small gap between him and other Xiantian masters, who had also transformed 50% of their Jinqi into Xiantian Jinqi. However, dealing with the Fire Lin beast, which had just entered into the Xiantian second stage, was a child's play for Yishuan. And now that Yishuan had entered into the Xiantian realm, once he would start practicing his Xiantian-level power techniques, then he would be able to fight on equal terms with the ordinary masters of the Xiantian third stage. However, right now, he was still just a master of the Xiantian first stage, who had still not grasped his martial arts technique to the extent of Xiantian level. You actually did not die," Chao Jinshui said with an astonished look in his eyes. "Thanks to you, I'm not dead." Yishuan, with a calm smile on his face, said, "And I'm afraid that today, your Chao family will be exterminated." You little bastard, how dare you threaten me?" Chao Jinshui roared loudly, "Today, I'll kill you." Chao Jinshui roared and rushed towards Yishuan and shot both his palms in succession, releasing a terrifying Jinqi, which endlessly stirred the air in the surrounding. Overconfident. Yishuan sneered and instantly shot Rushing Thunder Hand, although Rushing Thunder Hand was just a lower-level power technique, but in the hands of Yishuan, it had reached a profound level, and even if he used to mainly practice Cold Moon Beheader, but he had not put down the Rushing Thunder Hand, because it was simple, quite handy, powerful, and with the conversion of half of his Jinqi into Xiantian Jinqi. And accompanied with the strength of 11 dragons, how could a Xiantian expert like Chao Jinshui, who had transformed only 10% of this Jinqi into the Xiantian Jinqi, be his opponent? Boom! Yi Zaiwen's palm rumbled and released an intermittent thunderous explosion sound which echoed throughout the cave. Bang! With a heart-shaking breaking sound, all of the bones in Chao Jinshui's arm had been instantly broken under the terrifying strength of 11 dragons, present in Yi Zaiwen's attack, that had instantly turned the bones present in Chao Jinshui's arm into powder. Ah! Chao Jinshui screamed while his body had been sent flying upside down by the terrifying force present in Yi Zaiwen's attack that had also injured his internal organs. How is this possible? Everyone was stunned after watching this scene, because no one thought that a Xiantian master like Chao Jinshui would be unable to stop even a single palm attack from Yishuan. But, Yishuan had just now entered into the Xiantian realm, then how had his strength increased so much? However, it was obvious that Yishuan did not intend to show mercy on him. His long blade instantly chopped out a crescent-shaped bladiki towards Chao Jinshui and split him in half in the midair. Jinshui! Chao Jinbiao indignantly roared, "I'll kill you." Seeing his younger brother getting killed right in front of his eyes, it seemed as if Chao Jinbiao had become totally insane and frantic and suddenly rushed towards Yishuan. However, at this time, the Fire Lin beast also rushed towards Yishuan and spit out high-temperature flames from its mouth at him. From the other side, Chao Xing also rushed towards Yishuan. They must kill Yishuan because if they did not kill him, then the news about their conspiracy would leak out and numerous angry forces would come to destroy Chao family. Yishuan sneered and took out his long blade, and in just a step, his figure suddenly disappeared. Now that he had become a Xiantian master, not only just half of his Zhenqi had transformed into the Xiantian Zhenqi, but his strength and speed had also progressed by leaps and bounds. Breaking through to the Xiantian realm could be considered as the first big transformation for a martial artist, and it caused a tremendous change in the physical body as well. Shua! Yishuan instantly appeared in front of the Fire Lin beast, then stretched out his left hand and directly squeezed the hot flames spit out by the Fire Lin beast, and his right fist instantly punched out, with the Xiantian Zhenqi attached to the top of the fist, and instantly condensed into a terrifying Quanjin and fiercely smashed into its head. Although the speed of Fire Lin beast was very fast from the start, and after consuming the blue flaming lotus, its speed had increased even further, but it still could not avoid Yizaiwen's fist. Bang! The scales on the face of the Fire Lin beast had immediately shattered by Yizaiwen's punch. Boom! The gigantic body of the Fire Lin beast flew up again and severely hit at the top of a rock, generating a tremendous impulse which directly crushed its bones. It rolled on to one side while wailing incessantly. Right then, while Yizaiwen's attention was diverted towards the beast, Chao Jinbiao thought of this as an opportunity, and his figure suddenly appeared behind Yishuan with a trace of madness in his eyes. Chao Jinbiao was carrying a spear which instantly shot out like a shadow of a dragon, suffused with a terrifying undulation, and instantly advanced towards Yishuan. Smack! It seemed as if Yishuan had eyes on his back as well. He instantly turned around and grabbed the spear with one hand. Bang! After catching the spear so effortlessly, Yishuan took a step and instantly appeared in front of Chao Jinbiao and slapped a palm on his chest. Bang! Chao Jinbiao solidly suffered a direct hit on his chest from Yizaiwen's palm, but he didn't possess the incredible defense of the Fire Lin beast, and the strength of 11 dragons directly blasted into his chest and instantly turned his internal organs into mincemeat. He died a violent death in a flash. It took a long time to explain all of this, but it had all happened very fast, and at this time, the last remaining Xiantian master of the Chao family, Chao Xing, had become terrified of Yishuan after he had seen the two other Xiantian masters of his family getting killed so easily at the hands of a Yishuan, who had just entered into the Xiantian realm. This was something incomprehensible to him. However, at this time, it was too late to escape. Yishuan instantly threw the spear with such an incredible strength that it immediately reached Chao Xing, and pierced his body, and the immense force present in Yizaiwen's throw directly carried Chao Xing, along with the spear, into the magma, where he instantly burned to charcoal. Dash. Chapter 75, Yuan main sect. In a very short period of time, the Fire Lin beast had been crippled, and the 3 Xiantian masters of the Chao family had all been killed single-handedly by Yishuan. The sudden turn of events had left all of the warriors dumbstruck, but at this time, those warriors realized that their lives had already been saved by Yishuan and shouted in succession out of happiness. Kill these Chao family bastards, they actually conspired to kill us. Kill them all. I will completely eradicate Chao family. After facing such a life and death situation, now, many warriors had survived because of the unexpected appearance of Yishuan, and this had boosted their morale. They were in high spirits, and without wasting any time, they roared and rushed towards the warriors of the Chao family, who were still mourning the deaths of their strongest experts. Yishuan did not say anything and arrived at the side of Fire Lin beast and lifted his blade in a stance. The Fire Lin beast had been crippled by a punch from Yishuan and couldn't even move. Yishuan finally stabbed his blade into its body and put it out of its miseries. Yishuan received the corpse of Fire Lin beast in his storage ring, as it had the blood of Fire Qilin in its body, and its whole body could be considered as a treasure, even though it had not fully matured before dying. However, if it had completely transformed into a fully grown Fire Lin beast, then Yi Shiwen would have been unable to deal with it. When it had swallowed the blue flaming lotus, it had then entered into the growth period of rapid transformation, and if given enough time, it could have even reached the Xiantian 6th stage in just 1 year. Fire Lin beast had just entered the growth period, and after fully maturing, it would have become an absolutely terrifying demon beast in this locality and would have brought disaster on everyone, but fortunately, before it could fully mature, it had been killed by Yi Shiwen. "Brother Yi, I didn't expect you to be all right." Dai Xiaohua came up and said. About those Hotian realm warriors of the Chao family, he simply didn't care because this incident had come to a closure along with deaths of the 3 Xiantian masters of the Chao family and Fire Lin beast, and killing these warriors of the Hotian realm would only be a waste of time. Although Chao family was on the verge of complete extinction, but those warriors were quite furious for being conspired against by the Chao family because they could have lost their lives pointlessly. Both sides had started to fight, but soon, Wu Xiaoyang also joined the battle, and once a Xiantian master like him joined the fray, immediately, this fight had turned into a one-sided massacre, and soon, Chao family warriors had been completely massacred. "Brother Yi, thanks for saving our lives today, and if I ever got an opportunity in the future, I would certainly return the favor." Wu Xiaoyang said, "I am going back and reveal this news to the public, goodbye." Yi Shiwen nodded. After a while, everyone had left, leaving only Yi Shiwen and Dai Xiaohua behind in the cave, because those warriors had faced such a life-threatening experience in this cave and were reluctant to stay here. "Brother Yi, it is needless to say that I will return the favor, and if you ever need help with something, come find me in the Yunqing city," Dai Xiaohua said while laughing. Yi Shiwen nodded, and though Dai Xiaohua had not said something pleasant to hear, but after spending time with him, Yi Shiwen had finally come to understand his character. Yi Shiwen knew that the words he just said seemed fancy, but they still were a lot more meaningful. Dai Xiaohua was still young and was an outstanding genius who had already entered the Xiantian realm, so how could he possibly not enter the city of Yuncheng, which was a necessity for all the disciples of Dai family sect? "I think we will soon also be able to meet again." Dai Xiaohua laughed, looking at Brother Ye's talent. "You would certainly be going to the Yuan main sect, and I am sure that very soon, you will become an outstanding disciple of the Yuan main sect, and when the time comes, we should be able to meet again in the meeting of the warriors of 4 great sects." "Meeting of the warriors of 4 great sects?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Brother Yi, you don't know that the 4 great sects of our Yu state jointly holds the meeting of outstanding warriors, including some well-known figures coming from all over Great Yu state?" Dai Xiaohua said. "Sometimes, the masters of the royal family also join in. In short, the competition is going to be very fierce, but I think the strength of Brother Yi is more than enough and standing out won't be an issue for you." Yi Shiwen did not ask anything more because right now, he had not even entered into the main sect, so there were a lot of things that he still did not know about, but once he entered into the main sect, then these things won't remain hidden from his eyes, and he would eventually come to know about them. "Then I'll say goodbye. I must rush toward Yunqing city. You know, this time I secretly ran out on my own and did not go along with my team," Dai Xiaohua said. The 4 big sects of the Great Yu state were located at the 4 corners of the state, each in the east, west, north and south direction, which worked as the 4 gateways and supported the state. Yiyuan main sect was located in the west direction, and Qingfeng Mountains Yiyuan School was located further in the southwest, although separated by a large distance, but one could travel this distance in 1 day by riding a flight-type demon beast. But Yunqing City was located in the northern part of Great Yu State, and even by riding on a flight-type demon beast, it would take half a month time. Therefore this time, Dai Xiaohua was in a lot of tension compared to Yi Shiwen. "And, I'm sure we'll meet again someday." Yi Shiwen nodded. After bidding farewell to Dai Xiaohua, Yi Shiwen began to travel alone. 2 months' time passed in a blink of an eye. The large entrance to the Yuan main sect was located in the western part of Yu State, and when Yi Shiwen arrived there, he saw that it was completely bustling with people, who had arrived from more than 100 sub-schools. These people were actually the geniuses from all over the Yu State, as well as many visitors who had come along with them. And like Yi Shiwen, they had come to enter into the Yuan main sect. So this is the Yi Yuan main sect where the genius disciples from various Yi Yuan subschools come to study. Yi Xuan looked from afar and saw dozens of miles away, an endless mountain range of 10 huge mountains that looked like the mountains of immortals, and resembled a sacred mountainous region. Each and every one of those mountain peaks were so high, as if they were piercing the sky itself, covered with clouds and mist curling around the mountains. Countless waterfalls were traversing horizontally down those mountains, and it appeared as if the galaxies were falling from the seventh heaven. Among these endless mountains, a palace could be seen, rising steeply from the level ground, and well blended with the surrounding environment, which seemed to resemble the nature itself. The most spectacular thing was that in the depth of the mountain range, several palaces could be seen in a row, visibly floating above the tall peaks, and the whole scenery looked like a city in the mountains. Yi Xuan was amazed at the scene which had unfolded in front of him. It clearly resembled a paradise, and compared with the landscape and environment present in the Yi Yuan main sect, Qingfeng Mountain's environment was nothing. And that was the reason why many experts would rather come to these great sects. Coming to the main sect was similar to living in a paradise on the earth, which was going to be a unique experience for Yi Xuan, who had come from a different world. Even from dozens of miles away, Yi Xuan could clearly feel the intermittent waves of strong and rich lingqi present in the wind, which was very important for cultivating. With each blow of air on his face and with each breath he took, he would feel 100 vessels opening inside his body, giving a comfortable feeling to him. Yi Xuan didn't know that how many spiritual veins had been buried in these mountains by the main sect to make the air so rich in lingqi. If practiced here, then he would certainly gain twice the result with half the effort. Chapter 76, Senior Disciple Shi. No wonder that main sect had chosen such a place as its base, because even with low qualifications and talent, it was possible to enter into the Xiantian realm with little practice. Moreover, the disciples of Yi Yuan sub-schools, although one could not say that all were peerless geniuses, but their qualifications were still not so bad. And once the disciples of the Hotian ninth stage would enter into the main sect, they would be able to break through to the Xiantian realm within few years. If practiced in the environment of sub-schools, then they would be able to step into the Xiantian realm by the time they reached the age of 30 years old. Resources and environment of the sub-schools and main sect varied greatly. Although the difference was only a few years to enter into the Xiantian realm, but practicing for entering into the Xiantian realm inside the main sect and practicing for the same without entering the main sect were not the same things. The difference was only a few years, but the gap between them was already very big, because without competition and proper environment for cultivation, there was a high possibility for this gap to widen. Those who had already entered the Xiantian realm before entering into the main sect were the so-called seed disciples, who would immediately receive various resources from the Yi Yuan main sect to ensure that they should be able to have a rapid increase in their cultivation in a short time. This was also the biggest attraction for all of the geniuses, and many schools would send their genius disciples to practice in the main sect. And since these disciples were already considered geniuses from their respective schools, and once they would practice in the favorable environment of the main sect, then they would definitely get stronger. That is why, the disciples passing out of the main sect or other four big sects of the Great Yu State were never weak. Yi Xuan had some mixed feelings about this because he had just arrived at the main sect and he didn't know about the strength level of other geniuses, who had also come this year, and he also didn't know how much they had already practiced and how much they would progress after practicing in the favorable environment of main sect. He knew that things were going to be tough from this point onwards, and he needed to work hard to surpass others. After thinking about it, Yi Xuan felt a kind of passionate feeling building inside his heart, because now, these formidable opponents would become a driving force for his cultivation. However, right now, the first thing to do was to find the people of the Qingfeng Mountains Yi Yuan school. Suddenly, from the sky, a giant demon bird descended down, and standing on its top was a decent-looking man. He smiled towards Yi Xuan and said, "Younger brother, you should be this year's new disciple from a sub-school, right?" "I am." Yi Xuan nodded. "Brother is very talented, so young, and you are already a master of the Xiantian realm, and presumably also a seed disciple." The man laughed and said, "My name is Shi, and I am an inner disciple." "Greeting brother Shi, I am Yi Xuan." Yishuan said, and he could easily see through the depth of Shi-Yi's breath and knew that he was completely harmless, but his cultivation had already reached a very high level because unlike other Xiantian experts, who also contained a part of non-converted Houtian Jin Qi in their bodies, his breath was already complete and rich, as if he had already become one with the nature. Yishuan concluded that Shi-Yi was definitely a master of Xiantian 5th stage and he could be among the top inner disciples. Of course, there was no comparison between the strength of core disciples of the main sect and the core disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain, because the core disciples from the main sect could go to the sub-schools and become their head, or sovereign. This was the difference. Brother Yi, do you want to go inside? Shi-Yi said, if you want, you may come up and I'll give you a ride. It is greatly appreciated, brother. I am a disciple of the Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan school and I don't know where they are because I did not come along with them. Yishuan said. I know where people from different sub-schools live, come on, I'll take you there. Shi-Yi said. Thank you. Yishuan jumped upon the back of the demon bird and although he had not ridden demon birds, but he knew about how to do it. He immediately concentrated an influx of Jin Qi at the soles of his feet and firmly absorbed on the demon bird's back. Go! Shi-Yi shouted and the demon bird quickly moved waving its huge wings, flying into the clouds. Suddenly Yishuan felt like the wind was blowing and stinging on his skin like blades made of air, but fortunately, Yishuan had covered his whole body with Xiantian Jin Qi, and therefore did not feel anything. This demon bird was so fast that in a moment, they had already reached the inner parts of the Yuan main sect and he could not help but feel amazed at the beauty of this place and sighed with emotion. After careful examination, he saw tens of mountain peaks that were so high that the several palaces, atop these peaks, looked like starry sky from below. After Shi-Yi's explanation, Yishuan found out that these 10 enormous peaks represented 10 branch veins of the Yuan school and legend said that in the past, the founder of the Yuan school had handed over these 10 branch veins to 10 of his best disciples. The first 10 mountain peaks were now governed by people of the Yuan school, holding the reins of the main sect. Meanwhile, their strength was also unpredictable and all of them were Jindao experts, possessing strengths even more terrifying than the masters of the Xiantian realm, and to what extent, even Shi-Yi didn't know. Yishuan knew that Jindao masters were considered the authentic disciples of the Yuan main sect and they also possessed terrifying strength, capable enough to kill any experts of the Xiantian realm easily. Even in such a big influential sect like the Yuan main sect, there were only around 100 Jindao experts. Besides first 10 leaders and those other Jindao disciples, in the Yuan school, the disciples were divided into inner sect disciples, core disciples and outer sect disciples. With the vast resources offered by the Yuan main sect to the inner sect disciples, they would be able to break into the Xiantian realm in just few years so the number of inner sect disciples was always more compared to that of outer sect disciples. In fact, number of inner sect disciples would be the largest of about 50,000, followed by core sect disciples and least number of outer sect disciples. Yishuan had gained a direct insight into the true strength of Yuan main sect. Because having thousands of Xiantian warriors was really incredible for a sect. Shi-Yi told Yishuan that the new disciples from the sub-schools would go through the examination, and there, it will be decided which peak they would go to. And during the examination, if one was to give an outstanding performance, then there was a chance to get selected to study under the elder, which was a great honor for the disciple and his status would also increase. In a very short span of time, the demon bird flew closer to the settlements of the disciples. Chapter 77, Bullying. This is the courtyard for disciple of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan school, I will leave you here. The wings of the demon bird closed down and it descended on a mountain peak. This mountain peak was located in the more remote area, but several buildings were present on it. The disciples of other sub-schools were also concentrated on several other mountain peaks, although somewhat far away in the remote areas because main sect valued strength, and it was obvious that disciples from the sub-school would be weaker compared to disciples of the main sect. Thank you. Yishuan climbed up the stairs and quickly arrived at the hillside where the courtyard for disciples of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan school was located. Yishuan had not reached the top yet, when he heard a loud voice. How can you do this, this is our Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School's courtyard, you cannot just barge in and occupy our place. Yi Shuwen heard the voice of the only female top core disciple of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan School, Qian Wanru. Hey, why not, we have more people and you have so few, a total of only 20. So what if we want to occupy your courtyard? You have come from the small countryside school and you don't need this much space, but this time, our Shaoyang Yuan School has sent 50 people, so you separate out 2/3 of this courtyard and give it to us. This is not right, because this is the place where all of our forefathers from Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School once lived and practiced, why must we give this to you? I tell you what, let's decide with our strengths. An arrogant voice resounded in the courtyard. Yi Shuwen rapidly climbed up the steps and after reaching the top, he soon saw a group of approximately 30 young people, surrounding the disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School in the courtyard. Shaoyang Yuan School. Yi Shuwen frowned at the name of this school. This name, for Yi Shuwen, was definitely not strange because Shaoyang Yuan School and Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School had been hostile towards each other for God knows how many years. This enmity between these two sub-schools started in the ancient era and no one knew the reason behind it. However, after so many years of holding grudges and hatred towards each other, there was nothing that could be done to stop this clash between the two sub-schools. Two groups were confronting each other where one belonged to the Qingfeng Mountain, about 20 in number and all over the middle Hotian 9th stage and were being led by Zhang Yang, Qian Wanru, and Wu Hao. Among them, Zhang Yang had already entered into the Xiantian realm and had transformed 10% of his Jinqi into Xiantian Jinqi, while Qian Wanru and Wu Hao had both reached the peak of Hotian 9th stage. The group on the other side belonged to the Shaoyang Yuan School, headed by a young guy who currently had a sneer on his face. He was also a Xiantian first stage master, but with his 20% Jinqi already transformed into Xiantian Jinqi, he was a lot stronger than Zhang Yang. Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School this year's core disciples really had relatively mediocre strength. Hua Cheng, do not go too far with the bullying. At this time, Wu Hao spoke. Bullying? You call that bullying? Haha, a moment ago, that guy called Yi Feng, who was supposed to be the most powerful disciple from your school, easily collapsed in front of me. He is lucky that I almost stopped myself from wasting his cultivation. Hua Cheng said with a complacent smile on his face. In the back of the crowd, Yi Feng's complexion suddenly changed. So, that was the reason why Yi Shuwen had not seen him in the crowd because he had already been wounded. Yi Zaiwen's complexion suddenly changed. In this entire world, he loved his family the most and someone had dared to touch a member of his family and by doing so he had also invited the wrath of the emperor. Fuck off! Yi Shuwen shouted. Yi Zaiwen's shout had immediately caused commotion among the disciples of the Shaoyang Yuan School when they saw a 17-year-old boy was ferociously looking at them. Yi Shuwen. When Zhang Yang saw Yi Shuwen, a sudden happiness bloomed on his face. It's Brother Yi. Brother Yi. All of the disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School had an expression of surprise on their faces when they suddenly saw Yi Shuwen, and now they felt relaxed because now they knew that they had survived this crisis, because in the present situation, even Zhang Yang and Yi Feng, the two Xiantian masters had been unable to do anything but in their hearts, they had already accepted Yi Shuwen as their leader. After all, months ago, Yi Shuwen had easily beheaded a Xiantian master, although at that time, Lu Zhi's strength had not been that much, and his transformation of Xiantian Jinqi was inferior compared to the current Jinqi transformation of Zhang Yang and Yi Feng, but Yi Shuwen was also only a Hotian realm warrior back then and had still been able to behead a Xiantian master like Lu Zhi. Moreover, Yi Shuwen had also received Xiantian Dan and Blood Yuan fruit like Yi Feng and Zhang Yang, so it was easy to guess that he would definitely have entered into the Xiantian realm and his previous tyrannical strength would have become even more tyrannical. Indeed, as they had thought, in the last 2 months, Yi Shuwen's strength had progressed by leaps and bounds and he had become tyrannically power, even though he was still at the Xiantian first stage. He had fully consolidated his inner state within the Xiantian realm at the first stage, and half of his Jinqi had completely transformed into Xiantian Jinqi. He had experienced breakthroughs in all of his Xiantian-level martial arts techniques, where he had reached the peak of first layer of Tyrant Body Technique, which made his slim body to contain a total strength of 19 dragons. And now that he had reached the peak of transformation of 50% Jin Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi, he could even contend with the Xiantian third stage experts, and the most important thing was that the now ordinary warriors of the Xiantian third stage wouldn't be able to injure him. He had finally reached the peak of the Xiantian part of Celestial Step, and in just 2 months, his speed had nearly doubled compared to the speed he had while fighting the Fire Lin Beast. Changing muscles shrinking bones technique had been practiced to the Xiaocheng realm, and even while standing beside a Xiantian master, Yi Xuan could not be discovered and would even be able to change his appearance. He had achieved the best benefits in the Cold Moon Beheader and had actually practiced the Full Moon Beheader to the Desheng realm. Only the progress was not much for Coiling Dragon Palm, which was such a difficult martial art to practice that Yi Xuan could only grasp a little more knowledge about its first move, Hidden Dragon Rising from the Abyss. Now only the masters of the Xiantian third stage who had transformed 60% of their Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi could pose a threat to him. But with such advancements in his strength, the price naturally was very large. After entering into the Xiantian realm, the low-grade spirit stones consumption had increased dramatically, and almost all of the spirit stones he possessed had already been burnt in the last 2 months, and now, low-grade spirit stone were simply not good enough for practicing Xiantian techniques, so he could only use spirit stones, which were quite expensive. In other words, Yi Xuan had once again become poor. Chapter 78. Like a dead dog. However, Yi Xuan was quite used to his special way of cultivation, and he needed to arrange for surplus spirit stones to continue practicing in the special space. After entering into the Xiantian realm, the crazy consumption rate of spirit stones had led to a rapid increase in his strength and speed, to a terrifying extent. People of Shaoyang Yiyuan School were also giving somewhat strange looks to Yi Xuan, because they did not know why disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Yiyuan School looked so overjoyed after the sudden appearance of this young man. "Who are you?" Hua Cheng asked. "Qingfeng Mountain Yiyuan School's Yi Xuan." Yi Xuan indifferently said, "Who wounded my brother?" "It was him, that Hua Cheng." "Yes, it was him." Many of the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Yiyuan School immediately said while pointing towards Hua Cheng. "So what if it was me?" Hua Cheng looked at Yi Xuan with disdain and said, "Are you that Yi Feng's younger brother?" "That Yi Feng is a guy with an undeserved reputation and mediocre strength, that's all he is." Hua Cheng said indifferently. "You are just an ignorant dog who has actually dared to venture into our territory." Yi Xuan looked maliciously at Hua Cheng and said. At this time, the conflict between the two sub-schools had also attracted many onlookers, consisting mainly of disciples living on the neighboring mountain peaks. Both Qingfeng Mountain and Shaoyang Yiyuan schools were one of a dozen or more sub-schools, and the disciples from these sub-schools had settled on dozens of mountain peaks. Although more than a dozen mountain peaks were occupied by the disciples of these sub-schools, but for the entire Yiyuan school, this was still a small and insignificant area and nothing more. The key figures of Yiyuan school, the elders, the high-ranked disciples and others, all of them had their own separate mountain peak as personal domain. It was difficult to imagine how big Yiyuan school actually was. "You actually dared to abuse me!" Hua Cheng shouted with an angry look on his face. "Abused? That was just the beginning, because now I will beat the crap out of you." Yi Xuan sneered, and in just a step, using Celestial Step, he arrived in front of Hua Cheng in a flash. "Did you think you can just come here and run wildly and no one will punish you?" Yi Xuan mercilessly shot his big hand towards the face of Hua Cheng. Until a moment ago, Hua Cheng had been feeling triumphed when he suddenly saw Yi Zaiwen's hand coming towards him. He wanted to dodge but simply couldn't because Yi Zaiwen's speed was incredibly fast, almost like a whirlwind, and in an instant, Yi Zaiwen's hand had approached Hua Cheng's face. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's big hand slapped maliciously on the face of Hua Cheng. He suddenly screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood, and along with that, some of his teeth flew out. All the people present there had their jaws dropped. They knew about Hu Cheng's strength because being able to convert 20% of Zhenqi into Xiantian Zhenqi was rare for masters at such a young age. However, this Yi Xuan was simply too terrifying. His palm was so fast that Hu Cheng had been unable to dodge it and had suffered a severe slap on the face. Moreover, from the look on Yi Zaiwen's face, it seemed as if he hadn't put any effort at all. Shaoyang Yi Yuan School's disciples broke out in cold sweat, and Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School's disciples were cheering for Yi Xuan because his strength really had become even more unfathomable and tyrannical. You, Hu Cheng looked at Yi Xuan with a look of disbelief. What you? Yi Xuan again slapped him on the other side of his face and suddenly, a few more teeth went flying out. There was a huge difference between their strengths. Although Hu Cheng could be considered as an outstanding genius in the crowd of this year's disciples, who had already transformed 20% of his Zhenqi into Xiantian Zhenqi. If he had faced someone else then he would not be so miserable, but to his bad luck, he had dared to provoke Yi Xuan. I'll kill you. Hu Cheng was extremely furious in his heart and mind, because from infancy to adulthood, he had always been called a cultivation genius and had already gained fame at a young age by getting attention from everyone, but just now, he had received such humiliation. Both of his eyes had reddened and one could see hatred for Yi Xuan in his eyes who had humiliated him in front of such a large crowd, consisting of disciples from many sub-schools. When he had come to bully the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School, Hu Cheng never thought that he himself would be bullied instead. Hu Cheng drew out his sword blade and it brandished a dazzling sword light that instantly rushed towards Yi Xuan with lightning speed. Although Hu Cheng did not have the strength to hit back in front of tyrannical Yi Xuan and had been slapped twice that had made him face such a disgrace in front of everyone. But, he was strong and was indeed a genius of Shaoyang Yi Yuan School and at this time, the strength of a master of peak Xiantian first stage completely unleashed in this sword attack. Yi Xuan sneered and used rushing thunder hand to instantly grasp Hu Cheng's sword blade. Dang! A loud metal clashing sound resounded everywhere and Yi Xuan actually firmly grabbed Hu Cheng's sword blade in his hand. Bang dang! Bang dang! Bang dang! Yi Xuan kneaded that sword blade as if it was made up of clay, and its size decreased section by section. After entering into the Xiantian realm and practicing tyrant body technique to such a profound level, not only his strength had increased dramatically, but the toughness of his body had also increased to such an extent that now, it had become difficult for weapons like spears and swords to hurt him. Yi Xuan kneaded the sword blade along with the sword key and directly snapped it. How is this possible? Hu Cheng simply couldn't believe his eyes when his sword blade snapped in the grip of Yi Zaiwen's hand. Yi Xuan sneered and without giving any chance to Hu Cheng, he rushed like an azure dragon rising out of the abyss and instantly trod on his chest. Bang! Hu Cheng couldn't respond and his body was sent flying like a broken kite, upside down, directly towards the several disciples of Shaoyang Yi Yuan School with such a forceful impact that made them to fly out and most of them fainted immediately. Get the hell out of here! With a cold look in his eyes, Yi Xuan said, You absolutely cannot barge into this place because it belongs to our Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School, keep that in mind. All of the disciples of Shaoyang Yi Yuan School were giving angry looks to Yi Xuan, but did not dare to say anything. After all, a powerful Xiantian master like Hu Cheng had been beaten so easily and they were not even in the Xiantian realm. So, how could they dare to say anything to a tyrannical Xiantian master like Yi Xuan? Although they were at the peak of Hotian 9th stage and Xiantian realm was only one step across, but the difference was like heaven and earth between the Hotian realm and Xiantian realm. At this time, the disciples of other Yi Yuan schools started talking about Yi Xuan among themselves. Who is he? Why haven't I seen him before? Quite fierce, that Hu Cheng was definitely not weak, but he still couldn't hit back like a dead dog. Chapter 79, Father becomes the ancestor. I never thought that there was actually such a fierce man in Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School. Right, Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School is located in the remote areas of Great Yu State and rarely produces any powerful masters, but I never expected to see such an incredible master, originating from there. Gee, It seems like things are going to be interesting because their genius has been defeated so easily and Shaoyang Sub-School won't easily forget about this. Yes, I heard that the Shaoyang Sub-School also has a very strong genius and his strength is close to the strengths of several seed disciples. What is that guy called again? He is called Wen Shiyang. Yes, that's it, Wen Shiyang. Except those few seeds disciples, he can be considered a very powerful master. Gee, I did not expect Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School to have such a fierce character like him. He definitely didn't use his full strength against Hu Cheng and I am sure that when the time comes, we will get to see his true strength. Seeing that people of Shaoyang Sub-School had started to leave, Yi Shiwen did not stay there for too long and ran towards the inner courtyard. After entering the inner courtyard, he asked, "What the hell is going on? How did these bastards dare to bully our people?" Zhang Yang looked at Yi Shiwen with a baffled look in his eyes. Yi Shiwen had become even more powerful than the last time, and earlier, Zhang Yang had been able to see through his cultivation level but now, he absolutely couldn't see it at all. Although originally, Yi Shiwen always had a superior fighting strength and had also beheaded a Xiantian master, but at that time, he was still in the Hotian realm and his cultivation was visible to others, but now that he had transformed half of his Jinqi into the Xiantian Jinqi, his inner state had easily surpassed Zhang Yang, who had only transformed 10% of his Jinqi into Xiantian Jinqi. Although Yi Shiwen was still in the Xiantian first stage but his fighting strength was comparable to a master of Xiantian third stage. All of this had occurred in a few months' time and if he had not personally seen it, he probably would not have believed it. Few months ago, he had heard from Yi Feng about his young brother that he was just a master of Hotian third stage and was not even qualified to become a core disciple, but in these few months, he completely changed. But anyway, Yi Shiwen was also a disciple of Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School and the stronger he would be, the better for the reputation of their school. This is not the first time, we have been dealing with those guys from Shaoyang Sub-School for days and each time, they come looking for a fight with new and ridiculous excuses. This time, they wanted to occupy our place, that's really outrageous. Zhang Yang said in an angry tone. This was obviously a case of Shaoyang Sub-School's subterfuge because this mountain peak was so big that it could accommodate even 500 disciples at once, so all they were trying to do was nothing more than finding a pretext to come and bully us. Before, I was not present here and your elder brother had an argument with them and they injured him. Zhang Yang explained. Them? There was someone else? Yi Shiwen asked. Yes, if it was only that Hu Cheng, then your brother with 20% transformed Xiantian Jinqi was enough to handle him. Although, Hu Cheng's 20% Xiantian Jinqi transformation was superior to your brother but he would still have been able to protect himself. The main reason behind his injuries was the strongest disciple of Shaoyang Sub-School, called Wen Shiyang, who is already a master of Xiantian's second stage. He was the one who seriously wounded your brother. I came back and saw that Hu Cheng was about to destroy your brother's cultivation and rescued your brother. By that time, Wen Shiyang had already left. Zhang Yang explained the matter to Yi Shiwen. What? Yi Shiwen did not know that they were going to destroy Yi Feng's cultivation, otherwise he would not have showed mercy to Hu Cheng by only injuring him with a kick. He would never have allowed him to get away so easily. However, it was really amazing that Yi Feng had not only entered into Xiantian realm, but he could transform 20% of his Jinqi into the Xiantian Jinqi, in such a short time of 3 months. Excellent natural talent, but their school had issued a Xiantian pellet to them very late, unlike other sub-schools where they gave Xiantian pellets to train some geniuses, years before sending them to the main sect. When Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School had inquired, they found out that many disciples had already entered into the Xiantian realm in other sub-schools, and even without the resources, Yi Feng had achieved the same feat by taking the same time for breaking through to the Xiantian realm. So, considering the natural talent of Yi Feng, his breaking through to the Xiantian second stage was not surprising for Yi Shiwen. But anyway, under the tilt of the main sect and its abundant resources, the advantages of the using resources for cultivation in the last few years could be regarded as nothing. When Yi Shiwen heard that Yi Feng had been wounded and had almost lost his cultivation, he suddenly became furious. In order to bully the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School, they were willing to go as far as destroying someone's cultivation. This time, Xiaoyang's sub-school had really crossed the line. Who is the elder sent for escorting our school's group to main sect? Where is he right now? Yi Xuan asked, because in general, these sub-school disciples would not go alone to the main sect and the elders would accompany them inside the school. One reason was to protect them from any accident the way to main sect, and secondly, also to protect them from getting bullied in the main sect. This was the world which followed the rule of might is right and strength was the only parameter that measured everything. And the other reason was that these sub-schools would exploit their connections with their disciples in the future. Although now, they studied in the main sect but human relations could be useful to a great extent and when these disciples would become high-level experts or key figures in the main sect, they would then become the biggest backers for these sub-schools. This time, Ancestor Lin has come with us. Zhang Yang said. Ancestor Lin? Yi Xuan asked in surprise. How could the ancestor personally escort them because it was never expected of an ancestor to personally escort the disciples to the main sect as it was the job of an elder. I see, you left early so you do not know. Ancestor Lin Zhantian has already retired and the new ancestor of Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School is your father. Zhang Yang said. What? Yi Xuan was startled. So, he only left for few months and such a big change took place in the school where his father actually became the ancestor of Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School. Although Yi Kongming was originally an elder, but the status of an elder or an ancestor could never be same. The status of the ancestors of sub-schools was comparable to that of the true disciples of the main sect and his father had directly been promoted from the position of an elder to that of an ancestor. 1 month ago, Ancestor Lin resigned and has come to the main sect for debriefing. Zhang Yang explained. Where is the Ancestor Lin right now? Yi Xuan asked. Chapter 80, Dropping in, to fight in the normal course of events, he ought to be here to protect them. But now at such a critical time, they actually could not find him. If Lin Zhantian was here at that time, then all of this would never have happened and Yi Feng would not have been seriously injured by them. About this, we do not know where the Ancestor Lin is right now. When Ancestor had just arrived, he was summoned and not just him, elders of other sub-schools were summoned as well. Zhang Yang said, although at this time, the position of their sub-school's ancestor had been taken over by Yi Kongming, but since his childhood, Zhang Yang had been using the term ancestor to refer Lin Zhantian, and therefore, suddenly changing his habit of calling him ancestor was somewhat difficult for him. Also, no one would go to tangle over such a trivial matter. It seems like something happened and that's why they were called on a short notice. While talking to Zhang Yang, Yi Xuan entered the room and glimpsed at Yi Feng who was lying on the bed. His complexion looked pale and his breath was also intermittent and Yi Ruxue was on his side, taking care of him at the moment. Yi Xuan had not seen Yi Ruxue for last 3 months, and right now, he noticed that her breath was still firmly fixed on the peak Hotian 9th stage and there seemed to be a thin line and once she broke through this line then she would be able to break through to the Xiantian realm. And with the help of Yi Zaiwen's Xiantian pellet that he had left for her, this was only a matter of time. According to Yi Zaiwen's judgment, Yi Ruxu's strength had already stayed at the peak of Hotian 9th stage for some time and had fully consolidated, and there was a high possibility that she might experience a breakthrough this month and enter into the Xiantian realm. Brother, sister. Yi Xuan strode inside. Little brother, you are back. Yi Feng noticed Yi Xuan coming inside and smiled, but he had suffered serious injuries and suddenly, his face twitched. Brother, you must avenge our elder brother that when Shi Yang and Hua Qing went simply too far. Yi Ruxue indignantly said. Yi Xuan also remembered that in his memories, when he was small and would often get bullied for being weak, both Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue would always come to his rescue, and therefore, the bond among 3 siblings had always been extremely strong. Although there was no blood relation between Yi Xuan and the other 2, but the 3 of them were more intimate than blood-related brothers and sisters. Junior sister Yi, since you were inside the room, you missed the fight where brother Yi directly humiliated Hua Qing in front of everyone and tidied him up like a dead dog. At this time, Wu Hao answered for Yi Xuan. Really? Yi Rushue said with a surprised look on her face, but she was also worried for her younger brother. Now, Yi Xuan had been recognized by everyone as Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School's strongest disciple and Yi Feng was the second. If they could come to beat Yi Feng, then Yi Xuan would naturally be their next target. But according to Wu Hao's statement, Wu Cheng had been defeated effortlessly by Yi Xuan, and while Wu Hao was explaining things in detail, Yi Feng saw an indifferent look on Yi Zaiwen's face that made him resemble a person tired of war. It was not that he doubted Yi Zaiwen's strength, but thought that it was too inconceivable that Yi Xuan had so easily tidied up that Wu Cheng. If what Brother Wu said is right, then little brother, you have already vented my anger. Yi Feng grinned and said. Vent, it's still too early. Yi Xuan coldly said, how can you possibly consider this matter as finished? Yi Xuan's words were filled with killing intent. Originally, Yi Xuan had counted on the elder who had come with the group to the main sect, but it seemed that he couldn't count on that at the moment, but when he heard that the elder of the Shaoyang sub-schools had also gone for the summons, he immediately had an idea that rather than asking someone else for help, he might as well just ask himself. Today, things might have gone worse if he had not arrived at a critical moment, and when Yi Xuan watched Yi Feng lying on the bed, finding it difficult to move, he was even more infuriated. How could he possibly let them off? People of Shaoyang sub-school were waiting for a chance when their elder was not present, otherwise if he was present, then their plan to bully Qingfeng Mountain sub-school would most likely have failed. Because their elder, sent to the main sect along with these elite disciples, was also an incredible master and could easily deal with the Xiantian level disciples as well. And today, when all of the elders had been summoned, the people of Shaoyang sub-school immediately came to bully the people of Qingfeng Mountain. They had obviously not come for taking over the courtyard, and it was purely an excuse to provoke the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain sub-school and nothing more. Yi Xuan pulled out a bottle of medicinal pellets from a storage ring. There were many bottles of medicinal pills inside the storage ring that he had got from the Xiantian master, Luo Tian, and these medicinal pills were good for injuries. Although Yi Xuan had consumed most of the medicinal pills, but there were still some that he had saved for emergencies. After a dose of medicinal pills, Yi Feng's face immediately changed for better and he seemed to get better. A warrior's body itself was very strong, not to mention, these medicinal pills belonged to a Xiantian master, Luo Tian. Yi Xuan estimated that Yi Feng would be able to recover in 2 or 3 days and should be able to perform at full strength in the entrance examination R. When Yi Xuan saw that the condition of Yi Feng had considerably improved after consuming the pills, he gave out a sigh of relief and said, Brother, you just wait and see how I take revenge for you and vent your anger. Today, these Shaoyang bastards dared to come and bully us, and if I do not teach them a lesson, then won't that ruin our Qingfeng Mountain sub-school's reputation? And everyone would think of us as people from a weak sub-school. Yi Xuan's words were deep and meant that only strong people commanded respect in this world and weak were regarded as fools. Competition was present everywhere and it was especially very fierce among the sub-schools. Only a powerful person could command respect, and if Qingfeng Mountain sub-school didn't respond to the provocation of Shaoyang sub-school, then it would definitely be regarded as a weak sub-school. So, if someone tried to punch, it was necessary to punch back even harder to prove one's strength in this world. Teaching Shaoyang sub-school a lesson now was in the best interests of Qingfeng Mountain sub-school. But, this was just a secondary reason, and injuries of Yi Feng were the main reason why Yi Xuan was so fixated on punishing those bullies of Shaoyang sub-school. Yi Xuan ascertained the location of Shaoyang sub-school's courtyard and immediately went out, followed by many disciples of Qingfeng Mountain sub-school. Shaoyang sub-school's courtyard was located not far from the Qingfeng Mountain sub-school's courtyard, and only after a while, Yi Xuan was standing in front of Shaoyang sub-school. Yi Xuan stepped forward and shouted, Wen Shiyang, get your ass over here. Yi Zaiwen's voice spread out along with a terrifying zhenqi throughout the courtyard, causing many nearby Shaoyang disciples to rush over to take a look at what was happening. Who are you? How dare you to be so provocative and unruly in front of our Shaoyang sub-school residents? A young disciple came out and said. Get lost. Yi Xuan indifferently said. You bastard, I will kill you. The young disciple suddenly rushed furiously towards Yi Xuan, and his Quan Jin twisted and blasted out of his fists and went towards Yi Xuan. Yi Zaiwen's big hand stretched out, and it seemed as if the lingqi had condensed around his hand to form an iron wall. Yi Xuan fiercely struck his hand into that disciple's body. Bang! The disciple directly flew out while spouting blood from his mouth and fainted instantly. This loud sound immediately attracted the attention of many disciples in the courtyard of Shaoyang Sub-School, and only after a moment, dozens of disciples had arrived and completely surrounded Yi Xuan. Chapter 81, When Shuyang comes out. Only after a moment, dozens of disciples from Shaoyang Sub-School had arrived and completely surrounded Yi Xuan. Who are you? How dare you come to our Shaoyang Sub-School and act so unruly? Many of the disciples from Shaoyang Sub-School were angry, but among them were present some of those disciples who were part of Hu Cheng's group and had gone to bully the disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain. They immediately recognized Yi Xuan and were suddenly frightened because they could vividly remember that scene where Yi Xuan had bedeviled a Xiantian master like Hu Cheng, who was also one of the top genius disciples from their sub-school. Go tell Wen Shuyang to come out right now. Yi Xuan shouted. These disciples from Shaoyang Sub-School had tried to take advantage of absence of the elders to thoroughly discredit Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School and destroy its reputation, so all Yi Xuan was trying to do was return the favor by doing the exact same thing, in the exact same pattern, to Shaoyang Sub-School, and intended to thoroughly defeat and crush their strongest disciple in front of everyone. Hu Cheng's reputation was not big enough, so defeating him didn't solve the purpose of tit for tat, so Yi Xuan had personally come to play with Shaoyang Sub-School's strongest disciple. Who are you? How dare you call Brother Wen's name in such a disrespectful manner? At this time, a young disciple, who appeared to be in his 20s, came out of the courtyard and looked firmly at Yi Xuan. A mere man from Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School, daring to act wildly in front of our Shaoyang Sub-School, you are really courting death. The young man sneered, and within few steps, he had already arrived in front of Yi Xuan with an extremely fast speed, and at this moment, the imposing aura of a Xiantian master instantly released from his body and spread out. Yi Xuan immediately knew who this man actually was. He was named Su Yang and was one of the top 3 Xiantian disciples of the Shaoyang Sub-School. Since Yi Xuan had already met Hu Cheng and defeated him, and when this man came out, he referred Wen Shuyang as Brother Wen, so he was not Wen Shuyang as well and could only be the 3rd Xiantian master of the Shaoyang Sub-School, Su Yang. Su Yang's strength was very high, almost not under Hu Cheng's strength, which proved the fact that this year's batch of top disciples from Shaoyang Sub-School was indeed very powerful, and no wonder they had dared to bully a rival sub-school. However, after transforming 50% of his Zhenqi into Xiantian Zhenqi, the strength of Yi Xuan was now comparable to that of ordinary Xiantian 3rd stage masters. Also, his own cultivation was at the peak of Xiantian 1st stage, so how could Su Yang be his match? Yi Xuan raised his hand to block the incoming attack, and with a bang, a loud sound of air explosion resounded everywhere. Su Yang's offensive attack had been staggered right in front of Yi Xuan, as if Su Yang had collided into a huge iron wall, setting off a terrifying blast that swept across. During the fight between Xiantian masters, almost each of their punches could easily burst into air explosions, causing the air to vibrate and shake violently, just like how the ripples dance violently on the surface of a lake, fluctuating and distorting its original calmness. Su Yang's eyes widened with a flash of surprise clearly visible in his eyes. He obviously did not expect Yi Xuan to able to easily block his blow, though his attack just now seemed hasty, but he knew in his heart that before coming out of the courtyard gate, he had already started to prepare a sudden surprise attack on Yi Xuan, but he never thought that his planned-out offensive attack would be useless against Yi Xuan, who was just standing there with his one hand on his front side, like an impenetrable iron wall. My turn. Yi Xuan sneered and threw out a lightning-fast kick towards Su Yang, accompanied by a burst of crackling air explosions. Yi Zaiwen's kick was so fast that it was blowing the sound of a whistle in the air, as it was going straight for Su Yang. Su Yang was well prepared and immediately leaped up to avoid Yi Zaiwen's kick, but without any stagnation, Yi Xuan did not even give him any time to gasp for a breath, and immediately slapped out his palm. Rushing thunder hand, pass like thunder and move like the wind. For a time, Yi Zaiwen's attack looked similar to the 9th heaven's thunder. Bang! Su Yang lifted his hand to block, but immediately, a sudden burst of cracking sound resounded in the surrounding. The bones inside Su Liang's arms had been broken under the direct impact of Yi Zaiwen's palm attack, which possessed the strength of 19 dragons, which was quite terrifying because Su Liang had only reached the strength of 2 dragons and could never rival Yi Zaiwen's tyrannical strength. Yi Xuan had not even put any effort and had just shot his palm, but even this was more than enough to instantly crush both arms of Su Liang. The sound of breaking bones had suddenly scared the crowd of Xiaoyang disciples. Ah! Su Liang screamed again and again. Although a few of them had already seen the one-sided beating of Hu Cheng at the hands of Yi Xuan, and knew that he was very powerful, but they did not expect that Su Liang would be so drastically injured by a single attack from Yi Xuan. Su Liang could not even stop a single move from Yi Xuan. It was too fast to notice, but Yi Zaiwen's palm attack also had an essence of Missing Moon Beheader present in it. He had already practiced Missing Moon Beheader to the Desheng realm and it had come in handy. Instead of using his long blade, he had used his fingertips to perform the skill of Missing Moon Beheader. He had also integrated the essence of this skill inside his body, which had now become almost incomparably tough like the reinforced iron itself. Even without using his blade, though losing a bit of its true power and range of attack, this attack was still tyrannically powerful and effective. Having the skill of Missing Moon Beheader and along with the essence of his rushing thunder hand, his palm attack had become faster, stronger and terrifyingly heavy. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's palm rumbled and shot into the chest of Su Liang, breaking his breastbone immediately. Yi Xuan had tried his best to control the power in this palm attack, otherwise, if left unconstrained, this attack would have instantly killed Su Liang. But even after restraining his strength, Yi Zaiwen's attack contained such a terrifying force that it had directly sent Su Liang flying into the crowd of Xiaoyang disciples, and the impact made him unconscious immediately. Silence. There was a pin-drop silence on the scene. When the spectating disciples of many sub-schools saw the instant defeat of Su Liang at the hands of Yi Xuan, all of them immediately gasped. Immediately afterwards, a buzzing sound of discussions instantly filled the surrounding area. How is this possible? Su Liang was so easily defeated at the hands of this man. That palm attack was definitely an astonishing ability. This man is so powerful, I'm afraid he can easily compete with Wen Shiyang. And like always, these Xiantian masters will become stepping stones for someone else like that Hu Cheng and Su Liang, although both of them are quite famous and would have become even more famous in the future, but now, they have become a stepping stone for this man. It has always been this way. These geniuses contend with each other and only the invincible ones walk the bloody path to success. I'll wait to become powerful enough to be able to walk on the same path. After this battle, regardless of the outcome, the name of this person will spread throughout the main sect, and I'm afraid that before long, a lot of people will come to challenge him. After defeating Su Liang, Yi Xuan stepped forward and shouted, "Wen Shiyang, come out, if you're truly a man. Who are you? State your name." This time, a purple-robed young man, with a dignified look on his face, came out of the courtyard. "You're Wen Shiyang." Yi Xuan glanced at him and said, "Who are you?" Wen Shiyang looked at Yi Xuan and said, "Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School's Yi Xuan." Yi Xuan indifferently said, "Are you the one who wounded my brother? So you are Yi Feng's little brother. You dared to come here and actually caused ruckus and trouble for everyone. You are quite courageous, aren't you? But you should have thought before offending the school regulations," Wen Shiyang said. Chapter 82, Creative Concept. So you are Yi Feng's little brother. You dared to come here and actually caused ruckus and trouble for everyone. You are quite courageous, aren't you? But you should have thought before offending the school regulations, Wen Shiyang said. School regulations? Yi Xuan laughed loudly. If people really cared about school regulations, then Yi Feng would not have been injured and all of this would not have happened as well. And those so-called school regulations were just an excuse to protect the weak. Strong never cared about these old regulations. Earlier when Wen Shiyang had bullied Yi Zaiwen's fellow disciples, then he did not think of school regulations, but now that the same thing had been done to his people, he suddenly remembered about it. It was quite hilarious. Cut the crap, today I have come for just one thing, to return the favor by doing the same thing you did to my brother. Yi Shiwen sneered. You are courting death. Wen Shiyang said and glared at Yi Shiwen. He was the unrivaled genius of Shaoyang sub-school and no one dared to talk to him like this. So, the words of Yi Shiwen had made him extremely furious. Wen Shiyang rushed forward, almost like a blurred figure, while breaking through the sound barrier, causing a terrifying piercing sound which spread throughout the sky. Immediately after that, many spectating disciples directly fell on the ground with their eardrums bleeding from this terrifying sound. Clang! A long blade appeared in the hands of Wen Shiyang that he taken out from the storage ring, and in a flash, his blade instantly chopped out towards Yi Shiwen. Wen Shiyang was very powerful compared to Hu Cheng or Su Liang and was already at the Xiantian second stage with 30% transformed Xiantian Jin Qi. Although his transformed Xiantian Jin Qi was only 10% more than the other two, but his strength was already twice their strength. Yi Shiwen didn't demur and immediately unsheathed the long blade from his back with a clang sound, and shot a terrifying bladiki towards the sky, and it seemed as if the moon was slowly rising. Instantly, the pressure dropped down in the surrounding area, clearly displaying that Yi Shiwen had already obtained a thorough understanding of his blade technique, and everyone was shocked when the true meaning of Yi Zaiwen's blade skill suddenly evolved in front of them. Although Wen Shiyang had also practiced a high-grade blade technique, but it was obvious that currently, his blade skill was nowhere near the profound blade skill of Yi Shiwen. In a short time, Wen Shiyang would be able to reach the Deshang realm of his blade skill, and only then, he might evolve out the creative concept of his blade skill. The difference between their mastery of blade skills alone was too big. What is this creative concept? I actually saw a moon pressed down by the blade attack. One of the disciples was stunned and said. Yi Zaiwen's blade technique could already bring forth the creative concept after it had been practiced to the Xiantian realm, and although the power of the move Full Moon Beheader was comparable to that of an advanced power technique, but Cold Moon Beheader was actually a Xiantian level blade technique, and even if the power contained in each of its moves were different, but all of them contained an inherent creative concept. Only those power techniques which contained a creative concept could be called Xiantian power techniques, and if one could not bring forth the creative concept of a technique, then the Xiantian level techniques were no different from the advanced techniques. But if one could successfully understand and evolve out the creative concept of a technique, then the power of his technique would increase by leaps and bounds, and the technique would be able to display its ideal form. All of those outstanding disciples from different sub-schools, who were watching from the crowd, knew very well about the importance of the creative concept of a technique. They knew that even if someone was to practice a Xiantian level technique to the Deshang realm, they still might not be able to comprehend the creative concept hidden inside it and would only be able to harness its strength up to the advanced stage. Being able to realize the creative concept at such a young age was extremely rare. This is really a creative concept. I have only seen elders displaying the creative concept, their techniques. My God, how can it appear in the body of an ordinary person? Creative concept, it actually is a creative concept. Just by virtue of this creative concept, I'm sure that Yi Shiwen will easily enter into the current top 10 great disciples. Countless people were shocked, including Wen Shiyang, who was the closest witness of Yi Zaiwen's terrifying display of the creative concept of his blade skill. When this creative concept was brandished, a terrifying pressure had appeared in the surrounding area, as if the sky had fallen down on the ground, and it seemed like the bright moon had appeared, but it actually didn't exist. But, Wen Shiyang could vividly feel as if he was taking a walk on a moonlit road, and the bright moonlight was coming down from the heaven and had spilled on the ground, revealing even the slightest detail present in the scenery, leaving nowhere for the secrets to hide under this pure white moonlight, which also contained a penetrating feeling. This kind of oppressive feeling had already made Wen Shiyang anxious about this fight, and his mind was also in a confused state. How is this possible? How is this possible? Wen Shiyang could not believe his eyes, because even practicing one move to the Desheng realm was very tough, and one could say that they had grasped the essence of the technique, but to be able to comprehend and display a creative concept was equivalent to completely commanding the power of that move to its utmost extent. Because all of these Xiantian level techniques or above were once realized and created by the experts, and these techniques were the so-called imitations of nature itself, hence, there would definitely be a creative concept hidden inside them. In fact, these creative concepts had initially urged those experts to comprehend the moves based on these creative concepts and append them to form the power techniques. And only after truly comprehending the move to its acme, Yi Zaiwen's blade skill had evolved to such a terrifying extent and had displayed this clear and beautiful, but overwhelming, scenery to the spectators. And Yi Zaiwen's display of the creative concept was extremely clear, indicating that he had thoroughly mastered the move. It was simply unbelievable. There was a look of disbelief in the eyes of Wen Shiyang. To think that Yi Shiwen had not just reached the Desheng realm of his blade skill, but he had also comprehended its creative concept. But he didn't have time to be shocked, because if Yi Shiwen had actually evolved this level of creative concept, then he was definitely in a dangerous situation. He would never know that Yi Shiwen had the special space. For others, to be able to comprehend the creative concepts, they had to be very talented, but in Yi Zaiwen's case, so long as there were enough spirit stones in his possession, he would be able to completely understand and practice any technique. Yi Shiwen perhaps was not the most talented, nor the strongest, but he was hardworking, and so long as he had enough spirit stones, his practice speed would reach a terrifying level. Because for others, to practice and comprehend was like going into a huge tract of a library and read a variety of books to have an understanding and gain insights. For that, they needed to have high talent, in order to find out the exact direction they needed to search in to find the answers, and they were lucky, they might just find the right book. But this was not the case with Yi Shiwen, because he seemed to have an intelligent book's resolution system that could select the correct book for him, and so long as he swiped the card to pay the money, he could obtain just the book he needed, which would automatically be delivered to him, and he wouldn't have to go into the vast sea of books to search. Even for those geniuses, the chances of comprehending the creative concept were not high, let alone those ordinary disciples. Yi Shiwen chopped down his long blade, and the live picture drawn by the creative concept directly descended over Wen Xiang's bladiki and instantly crushed it down under its terrifying pressure, which seemed as if the whole world was collapsing inch by inch. Their bladiki collided in the midair, and the friction caused a loud and sharp whistling sound, which then set off a wave of sound waves. Boom! Finally, Yi Zaiwen's bladiki instantly crushed the bladiki of Wen Shiyang, and fiercely blasted into his body. Bang! Wen Xiang's blade couldn't block this incredible attack from Yi Shiwen, and his body was sent flying horizontally, while he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 83, Fame spreads. Everyone was silent. One move, just a single move. In a flash, the spectating disciples had witnessed how the reputation of Wen Shiyang was zapped and completely overwhelmed by a single flash of Yi Zaiwen's Xiantian bladiki. There was a huge difference between Xiantian and Houtian Jinqi, and 30% transformed Xiantian Jinqi, in fact, had incredible density and toughness, but he was still nowhere near to be Yi Zaiwen's match. Yi Shiwen had used his creative concept combined with his bladiki to display such an incredible prowess, and everyone was aware of the fact that, at that time, if Yi Shiwen had not restrained his true strength, then Wen Shiyang would definitely have been split in half. Although school regulations were relatively wide, but were not wide enough to allow killing someone in front of a large crowd, at least, Yi Shiwen was not powerful enough to override school regulations. But, today, if even he had died at the hands of Yi Shiwen, although it would have caused trouble, but Shaoyang sub-school's people could only swallow the bitter pill. All of their Xiantian masters had been defeated, and their own strengths were not good enough. Also, nobody would come to show their sympathy to them, because everyone knew that people of the Shaoyang sub-school were the real perpetrators this time, and this result was inevitable for them. Finished, really finished. All of the outstanding disciples of Shaoyang sub-school had been defeated, and if they didn't recover in time before the beginning of school assessment, then Shaoyang sub-school wouldn't be able to participate in the assessment, because without its top 3 Xiantian masters, it would have no chance to win. This entry assessment of the main sect was not just an ordinary assessment, because it was directly related to the future developments of the various subschools. In the main sect, the resources and facilities were allocated to these subschools based on the performance of their outstanding disciples respectively. In the eyes of the main sect, although it allowed entry to weak disciples as well, but it only was a place for elite disciples from various subschools, so of course, it would provide more rewards and resources to more powerful disciples, and these elite disciples would also get more resources in the coming year. This was the reason why the various subschools would not hesitate to spend their resources on these geniuses before sending them to the main sect. But now, all three Xiantian masters of Shaoyang subschool had been devastated effortlessly, and that too in front of everyone. It was totally inconceivable that this year's Shaoyang subschool was definitely the worst of the crowd, and this would directly affect the allocation of resources in the coming year for it. Earlier, when Shaoyang sub-school disciples had gone to bully the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain sub-school, they would never have expected that things would come to this, and that too by the interference of just one man. The fight between these two men had directly determined the status of the two sub-schools, and the results of this fight was that the reputation of Qingfeng Mountain sub-school had skyrocketed and become like a tough iron sheet, after completely destroying the reputation of Shaoyang sub-school. After this, he would thoroughly become famous. A disciple standing in the crowd murmured. As if a big rock had been dropped in a calm lake, in a flash, Yi Zaiwen's fame had spread off like the intermittent waves. The news that Yi Shuwen had effortlessly defeated Shaoyang sub-school's strongest disciple, Wen Shiyang, had spread among more than 100 sub-schools. Originally among thousands of disciples, Wen Shiyang was not one of the strongest and was only a minor celebrity. Even if Yi Shuwen had defeated Wen Shiyang, this was not that big of a deal for other elite disciples, but everyone present during the fight had seen how Yi Shuwen had used the creative concept of his blade technique to a profound level. This had made him to suddenly become a target and focus of attention of many people. In the Qingfeng Mountain sub-school's courtyard, Yi Feng was standing. He was a Xiantian master, so his resilience was very tough, plus he had consumed a lot of high-grade medicinal pills provided by Yi Shuwen, so his condition had become a lot better and he could walk around easily. At this rate, he would be completely healed before the beginning of assessment. Nearby, Yi Shuwen and Yi Ruxue, his two siblings, stood quietly, and Zhang Yang, Wu Hao and Qian Wanru were also present, making this a gathering of Qingfeng Mountain younger generation's top disciples. The news about Brother Ye's fight with Wen Shiyang has spread everywhere. After knowing that Brother Yi has used creative concept of his blade technique, I'm afraid a lot of people won't be able to sleep now. Now they won't dare to underestimate Qingfeng Mountain sub-school. Qian Wanru said in a very excited tone. Qingfeng Mountain was located in the remote areas of Great Yu State, and Qingfeng Mountain sub-school was always discriminated against by the schools from bigger districts. Yes, I'm afraid there are people who cannot sleep, and it seems that some are deliberately adding fuel to the fire. Yi Feng said with a sigh. This news had spread so fast, so wide, that it was clearly not the result of self-propagation and natural dissemination, and it was certain that people were adding fuel to the flames. I think people just want to stir the muddy water. Zhang Yang frowned and said, someone wants us to become the target of public criticism, and they may join hands to destroy us. There's a possibility that you may be right. It is true that in the past, our sub-school had become friends with many sub-schools, but had also made a lot of enemies, and in a short time, we will come to know the inside and outside of this matter. Yi Feng said. It doesn't matter if they are deliberately spreading the news, or adding fuel to the flames. If we want to stand out during the coming assessment, we must be prepared to face all of this. Yi Shuwen said, it's quite simple, we will knock down anyone who tries to come in our way. Yi Zaiwen's discourse revealed self-confidence. He knew that any plots or conspiracies were nothing in face of a formidable strength and could only accomplish elimination and nothing else. Ha ha ha, right, what little brother said is absolutely right, we will overthrow any plots thrown at us, no matter which method they resort to. Yi Feng laughed and said. If someone wants to see what we are made up of, we will let them see enough. Our Qingfeng Mountain sub-school is not worse than any other school. Yi Shuwen said with a cold smile on his face. Yes, that's right. Yi Feng nodded, then turned to Yi Rushua and said, now I am all right and can take care of myself, so you don't have to look after me anymore. Go, use these few days left before the assessment, to finish your closed-door training and try your best to break through to the Xiantian realm. At the time of assessment, we would be happy to have one more helper. Yi Rushua looked at Yi Feng, then nodded and said, okay. She also knew that if she did not break into the Xiantian realm, then she won't be of any help to them. She still had the Xiantian pellet, gifted to her by Yi Shuwen, and breaking into the Xiantian realm was now much easier for her than others. Without a Xiantian pellet, even in the environment of main sect, breaking through to the Xiantian realm would still take a lot of time and effort. Both Wu Hao and Qian Wanru were somewhat enviously looking at Yi Rushua, but unfortunately, they did not have a Xiantian pellet and it would take them some time before they finally enter into the Xiantian realm. Then, abruptly, a disciple of the Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School hastily ran inside the courtyard and said, it's bad. A person has come outside to challenge Brother Yi. As expected, they really came. Yi Feng said. So fast. Zhang Yang frowned and said. I'll go and take a look. Yi Shuwen said. Yi Shuwen went out of the courtyard and was surprised to find a white-robed youth coldly looking at him. This tall and sturdy young man's eyes had a faint Jin qi which burst out and splashed in all directions. He was exuding an ice-cold chill aura which appeared to be coming out from the glaciers. When Yi Shuwen glanced at him, the youth seemed as if his whole body was frozen, just like a man made up of ice. Chapter 84. The three major sub-schools. The disciples from many sub-schools had gathered around to watch this fight, and disciples from other mountain peaks had also arrived because Yi Zaiwen's fame had attracted them here, and these disciples were very interested to take a look at the strongest disciple of Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School, who had recently got the limelight. Yi Shuwen looked at the challenger and said, are you going to challenge me? Certainly. The man said. Who are you? Yi Shuwen asked. Bingdao Sub-School's Chu Sun. The man replied. Bingdao, so he was actually the disciple of Bingdao Sub-School, no wonder. On the east coastline of the Great Yu State, near the sea, there were some sub-schools, but Bingdao was one of the most famous ones because the disciples there practiced ice attribute power techniques. Ages ago, the forefathers had set up this system, as there was a world of ice and snow in 300 miles radius of the seacoast and was the best environment for practicing ice attribute techniques. The disciples who passed out from the Bingdao sub-school were always very powerful. Sub-schools could be divided into strong or weak categories, and Qingfeng Mountain sub-school was one of the relatively weak, but on the contrary, Bingdao sub-school had always been known as one of the three major sub-schools. In the crowd of sub-schools, Bingdao sub-school's strength was ranked among the best. Chu Sun, he is Bingdao's Chu Sun, no wonder his strength seems so formidable. A disciple exclaimed. So he is, no wonder, excluding those three invincible masters, Chu Sun can be considered as one of the strongest. You're Chu Sun. Yi Shuwen said. After staying here for more than a day, it was not that Yi Shuwen did not know anything, and he had certainly been informed about the outstanding disciples of various strong sub-schools. This term's batch of sub-school disciples was the strongest batch known for centuries, as if strong masters had literally reigned on the main sect. And the top three players among them were definitely the most outstanding disciples of the three sub-schools. In the past, the disciples of these three major sub-schools were the strongest, and therefore, they had obtained the most resources compared to other sub-schools and cultivated stronger disciples for the next term. With the repetition of this cycle, over time, these three sub-schools had gradually become the most formidable sub-schools with their strengths and resources far above other sub-schools. It could be said that, like always, all of the disciples of this session of the three major sub-schools were already in the Xiantian realm, and not only that, not a single Hotian realm disciples would be attending the assessment from these sub-schools. When Yi Shuwen heard this news, he could not help but held his breath in astonishment. All were Xiantian masters. What kind of ridiculous situation was this? It was said that these major sub-schools would put great and costly efforts to cultivate strong Xiantian disciples. And if the three major sub-schools would send more and more Xiantian disciples, then the other sub-schools had to spend as well on their outstanding disciples, although they never expected to be better than the other three major sub-schools, but at least, their own disciples wouldn't be easily bullied by the disciples of the three sub-schools. But, because the Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School was situated far away in the remote regions of Great Yu State, they obtained the news very late. No one knew how strong the three invincible masters actually were, because no one had forced them to use the full strength. But, the hierarchy of the disciples was well known to everyone, in which, experts like Chu Sun held higher position compared to Wen Shiyang and others. In fact, Chu Sun was a lot stronger than Wen Shiyang. I hear that you claim to be the strongest sub-school disciple, so I have personally come to teach you a lesson, so that you know the immensity of heaven and earth. Chu Sun coldly said. Certainly, it was not Yi Shiwen who had claimed to be the strongest disciple, but someone with ulterior motives, and they naturally didn't have good intentions for Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School and its disciples. Whether I am the strongest disciple or not is none of your business, and you actually came to lecture me for this. Don't you have anything better to do? Yi Shiwen sneered and said. Anyways, this Chu Sun was really too arrogant. Just because he heard Yi Ziwen's name as the strongest disciple, he actually came to teach him a lesson. Does he really think that Yi Shiwen would just stand there and take his punches? You are courting death. Chu Sun had become furious. Who was he? He was a top disciple of Bingdao Sub-School, one of three major sub-schools, but Yi Shiwen had dared to talk disrespectfully with him. Today I will cripple you and turn you into a pile of bones. Depends on you. Yi Shiwen repeatedly sneered. Chu Sun's figure suddenly flashed and his Zhenqi suddenly released out of his body. The ambient temperature of the surroundings steeply plunged, as if sucked into the world of ice and snow. Huge and ice-cold Zhenqi aura had instantly turned the entire surrounding pure white, and the ferocious power of Chu Sun, which was far above Wen Shiyang, had properly displayed itself in front of everyone with his 40% transformed Xiantian Zhenqi surging majestically high into the sky. After breaking through to the Xiantian first stage, ordinary masters possess 10% transformed Xiantian Zhenqi, and only after transforming 20% of their Xiantian Zhenqi, they could reach the peak of Xiantian first stage. Similarly, after reaching the Xiantian second stage, those with 30% transformed Xiantian Zhenqi were considered ordinary third stage masters, and only after transforming 40% Xiantian Zhenqi, they could reach the peak of Xiantian second stage. Chu Sun was at the peak of Xiantian second stage, and compared to an average expert, he was extremely powerful. Chu Sun shot his palm with a snow-white Zhenqi wrapped on his arms, resembling a pure white crystal, which was unusually beautiful, but incredibly dangerous. His palm viciously shot and directly froze the surrounding air while producing a crackling sound. When Yi Shiwen saw Chu Sun's palm approaching towards him, in an instant, Yi Shiwen moved his hands and shot him palms, covered in a terrifying Zhenqi, which directly moved forward towards the incoming attack. Bang! 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 Their fight immediately approached the acme, and in an instant, a dozen blows had been exchanged between the two. Chu Sun was amazed, as he never thought that Yi Shiwen would be able to block his moves so easily. As one of the top disciples in Bingdao Sub-School, although he was not the strongest, but he was still ranked among the top 5, but even so, he actually couldn't press down Yi Shiwen even after exchanging so many blows. He originally thought of Yi Shiwen as a boy who was boasting around after a little success, claiming to be the strongest disciple, but he never imagined that this boastful boy would actually be so strong. After coming to the main sect, many disciples bragged about themselves, but in Chu Sun's view, they were nothing but clowns. Even his big brother had never said that he was the strongest disciple, then how could this man act recklessly and claim himself as the strongest disciple? He was in a bad mood and had come to vent his anger on Yi Shiwen, but he never thought that fighting Yi Shiwen would be like kicking an iron wall. Could it be that you are only at this level? Yi Shiwen sneered and said. Chapter 85, The Difference of 10, Could it be that you are only at this level? Yi Shiwen sneered and said. Yi Shiwen shot his palms with a shabu, thunder-like rumbling sound, and this set of palm method in his hands could be considered superb. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's palm shot and Chu Sun raised his hand to block. Suddenly, with a loud noise, a great force transmitted into the arms of Chu Sun which numbed from the shock. Chu Sun's ice-cold Jinqi instantly covered all over his arms, suddenly covering with a burst of coldness, and expelled the numbing feeling from his arms. He was extremely shocked in his heart. How could this man's strength reach such dreadful proportions? Whether it was Hu Cheng or Wen Shiyang, the strengths of both of them were far worse than the strength of Yi Shiwen, so they never had a chance against Yi Shiwen, also when they couldn't even force him to use his full force. In Yi Zaiwen's fight with those two, he had easily defeated them in not more than a single strike that had directly broken all the bones in their bodies, causing them to lose consciousness immediately. The fight had finished so fast that the spectators did not get enough time to feel the real terrifying strength of Yi Shiwen. Anyway, no matter how much force he had used, they would have fainted instantly. But Chu Sun was different, and even if Yi Zaiwen's combat strength was equivalent to the ordinary masters of Xiantian 3rd stage, but Chu Sun's strength was also close to the Xiantian 3rd stage, though a bit less, and that was the reason why he had not directly fainted in one move from Yi Shiwen. But also because of this, everyone had got a chance to witness Yi Zaiwen's terrifying strength of 19 dragons that had totally overwhelmed Chu Sun's strength of 9 dragons. Chu Sun was facing a master who possessed the strength more than twice his own strength. Transformed 10% Xiantian Jinqi granted the strength of 1 dragon, 20% transformed Xiantian Jinqi granted the strength of 2 dragons, but after transforming 30% Xiantian Jinqi, one could reach the strength of 5 dragons. After transforming 40% Xiantian Jinqi and reaching the peak of Xiantian's 2nd stage, Chu Sun's strength had reached the peak strength of 9 dragons. Once he would break through to the Xiantian 3rd stage after transforming 50% Xiantian Jinqi, his strength would further reach the strength of 10 dragons, which was still lower than Yi Zaiwen's current strength. After transforming 60% Xiantian Jinqi and reaching the peak of Xiantian 3rd stage, one could gain the strength ranging from the strength of 20 dragons to 49 dragons. Since Yi Shiwen was already at the peak of 50% transformed Xiantian Jinqi and had reached the strength of 19 dragons, which was more than twice Chu Sun's current strength, each of his blows contained a terrifying strength and was instantly numbing the arms of Chu Sun. Although, like always, Yi Shiwen had not beaten Chu Sun in one shot, but he had already put Chu Sun in a tough situation where he was secretly crying incessantly in his heart. He was constantly shouting in his heart that what kind of monster was Yi Shiwen. Just from taking a look at him, no one could make a guess that a master of Xiantian 1st stage could actually possess such a monstrous strength. Chu Sun noticed that Yi Shiwen was only using his palm technique, but with brute force contained in each shot, to actually force him into spending all his Jinqi just for defense. Such monstrous strength, even if it was inferior to the 3 invincible masters, but it was still equivalent to one of the top underplayers. How could such a figure appear in a small sub-school like Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School, located in the remote area of Great Yu State? But Chu Sun didn't get enough time to think about all that because of the relentless attacks of Yi Shiwen. It was clear that Yi Shiwen had thoroughly grabbed the upper hand in this battle. Pass like thunder and move like the wind. Lightning and thunder. Ghostly thunder axe. Leveling storm 4 strokes. These 4 moves of rushing thunder hand technique had been used by Yi Shiwen, as if they had been used by the god himself, with each of these moves containing tremendous strength, coming one after the other, almost with no pause, with perfection, producing thunder-like rumbling sound in between the moves, as if they contained the power of heavenly thunder. Chu Sun had been totally pressed down under Yi Zaiwen's non-stop strikes and was totally depressed. How could he not know about rushing thunder hand? This was a lower-level power technique taught in almost all sub-schools and throughout the Great Yu State. There were countless people who knew this technique, but no one had ever displayed this kind of might while using this technique. It was as if Yi Shiwen had fully assimilated the true essence of this technique and had displayed its ideal form in front of everyone. Even those elders could not be compared to Yi Shiwen when it came to mastery over power techniques. But, for Chu Sun, the most depressing thing was that Yi Shiwen had used a lower-level power technique and displayed such a terrifying might that he had actually been completely pressed down and could only fight a defensive battle. After this, he would not be able to lift his head out of shame. When Chu Sun was a child, he had practiced a lower-level power technique for some time, but soon, when his cultivation level had progressed, he had soon abandoned it for practicing an intermediate power technique, and now that he had already practiced advanced power techniques and Xiantian power techniques, he would never even think of using a lower-level power technique in battles. But right now, he was being defeated by a lower-level power technique? He never thought that lower-level techniques could actually gain such terrifying might, especially when wielded by Yi Shiwen. Bang! 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 The metal clashing sound spread each time Yi Shiwen and Chu Sun collided and exchanged moves. A terrifying battle between the two powerful Xiantian masters was sending blast waves everywhere in the surroundings. This is so incredible. I did not think that Yi Shiwen would actually be able to fight off Chu Sun without losing for such a long time. Lose? It is obvious that Chu Sun has been completely pushed down by Yi Shiwen and his defeat is inevitable. A disciple laughed loudly and said. Moreover, Yi Shiwen has not used his strongest technique yet. That day, I saw the true strength of his blade technique when Shiryang had lost in a single blade attack, but right now, Yi Shiwen has not drawn his blade, otherwise Chu Sun would not be able to withstand for so long. Wait until Yi Shiwen draws his blade, because then, Chu Sun would not be able to play defensive like this. I never thought that this Yi Shiwen would actually be so powerful, and it seems that except for those three invincible experts, Yi Shiwen is definitely one of the top star-ranked disciples. Chu Sun's hands had gradually numbed with no way to relieve this numbness even after using his Jin Qi. He was still unable to accept this turn of events in his heart. How could this be? Yi Shiwen had not even drawn his blade and was already so powerful. Was Yi Shiwen going to defeat him without even using his blade? How is this possible? There was a difference of strength of 10 dragons between the strengths of Chu Sun and Yi Shiwen. Although Chu Sun was using a superior power technique than Rushing Thunder Hand, but by virtue of the degree of mastery over Rushing Thunder Hand and the terrifying strength of 19 dragons, Yi Shiwen had completely pressed him down. But, Chu Sun was still unwilling to accept this result where he might get defeated by a Xiantian first stage master like Yi Shiwen. Finally, Chu Sun's hands had completely numbed and he couldn't block the relentless attacks of Yi Shiwen and was sent flying out while screaming. Dash! Chapter 86, You all can come together. Everyone was shocked watching this scene, because no one was able to see the depth of Yi Shiwen's true strength. The stronger his enemy was, the stronger he would become accordingly. Earlier, his battle with Hu Cheng and now with Chu Sun, each time, his strength would grow, which was very shocking for everyone. It was as if his strength was truly unfathomable. Yi Shiwen looked coldly at Chu Sun. Although this guy was conceited and very arrogant, but there was a valid reason behind his arrogance, as he was at the peak of Xiantian's second stage and his strength was indeed sufficient enough to be ranked among the top row of the disciples. Yi Shiwen almost could not waste his cultivation because just when he had shot his palm towards Chu Sun, his intention had been detected by Chu Sun, who then blocked Yi Shiwen's palm and slightly deflected it. Yi Shiwen, accept our challenge. Yi Shiwen was still thinking about this matter when suddenly he heard 3 loud voices challenging him. Yi Shiwen looked up and actually saw that 3 similar wretched-looking fat people had jumped out of the crowd. Shameless! The 3 of you are taking advantage of him who has just finished fighting a battle. These 3 are the infamous Zongshi 3 brothers from Qingqing Sub-School. So they are the Zongshi 3 brothers. Ah, no wonder they are too outrageous. After coming to the main sect, it didn't take long for the Zongshi 3 brothers to gain quite a reputation, and of course, this reputation was not a good one. These 3 brothers were really shameless. Yi Shiwen also knew about the Zongshi 3 brothers and could only sigh. So, do you dare to accept our challenge? The eldest of the 3 Zongshi brothers challenged Yi Shiwen in a provocative manner. In spite of facing criticism from the crowd, 3 Zongshi brothers were not willing to give up. Now that Yi Shiwen had already defeated Chu Sun, they were aiming at defeating the exhausted Yi Shiwen and gain instant fame. As to how shameless this act was, they didn't care, on the contrary they were very complacent from this. They only considered it as their praise. Yes, if you don't want to accept our challenge then simply throw in the towel and we will walk away. The second Zong brother said in a provocative tone. Well, brother, I think he has got no guts. The youngest Zong brother pretended to be cool and said. Shameless. Behind Yi Shiwen, Yi Rushua frowned and said. She was very mad at them as this act was no different from taking advantage of someone else. Initially, they did not dare to stand up on their own against Yi Shiwen, and now that he was exhausted after a battle, they were trying to provoke him by implying that he was a coward. In her view, it was really shameless. Other disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School were also glaring and giving angry looks to the three brothers because this was simply too outrageous. While other disciples of different sub-schools were also looking at the three brothers with a look of disdain in their eyes and were cursing them for this shameless act. All eyes were fixated on Yi Shiwen, waiting how he would answer. The stern-looking Yi Shiwen suddenly chuckled and said, You can certainly challenge me and I am always ready to take on people like you any day. What, you dare look down on us three brothers? The second brother said in an angry voice. If you want to challenge me, you will have to bet 100 spirit stones and if lost, no money returns. Yi Shiwen indifferently said. When the three Zongshi brothers heard this, they froze for a moment because they never expected that Yi Shiwen would actually put forward such a condition. One must know that 100 spirit stones was a big amount for an ordinary Xiantian master. But Zong boss nodded and said, all right. In his view, as long as they beat Yi Shiwen, they would not lose anything. He didn't want to delay the fight even for 1 minute, because Yi Shiwen might recover from his exhaustion, which would naturally be very unfavorable to them. The three Zongshi brothers immediately agreed to the terms of battle. These three brothers really were so shameless, but this time, they had probably miscalculated by thinking that they could easily bully Yi Shiwen. All three of you can come together. Yi Shiwen said. What did you just say? The Zong boss said, but since they did not have any sense of shame, they would of course take this chance to work together and defeat Yi Shiwen. Boom! The three Zongshi brothers, with their huge statures and inconsistent speeds instantly, rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The overall strength of the three Zongshi brothers was quite high and they actually were the masters of Xiantian's second stage, and their boss had transformed 40% Xiantian Jin Qi and was already at the peak of Xiantian's second stage, although he was not as strong as Chu Sun, but the difference between them was not very wide. All three of them together smacked their fists with their combined strength, actually somewhat stronger than that of Chu Sun. Many spectating disciples, without uttering a single word, were anxiously watching the fight. Bang! 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 Yi Zaiwen's arm instantly blurred and blocked their joint attack. Soon, they felt as if they had collided with an iron wall. They had originally expected that Yi Shiwen had already exhausted his Jin Qi, because if they had teamed up to fight against Chu Sun, they would definitely have exhausted themselves. But from the appearance of Yi Shiwen, neither his complexion was red due to fatigue, nor did he look exhausted even after fighting a fierce battle with Chu Sun. This had made them to secretly complain in their hearts at their decision to fight Yi Shiwen. But Yi Shiwen did not give them any chance of respite. Bang! Yi Shiwen used his one hand to catch a punch from the youngest brother, followed by using another hand, he instantly punched him. Kara! With a crisp sound of breaking bones, the youngest Zong brother's hand was instantly broken by Yi Zaiwen's punch. Yi Shiwen then lifted one foot and shot a lightning-fast kick covered with a terrifying Jin Qi and shoved directly into the belly of the youngest brother. He screamed again and again and his stout body was instantly sent flying out and severely fell on the ground and he fainted. Third brother. The second Zong brother roared and rushed towards Yi Shiwen, but then he also walked on his brother's footsteps. Yi Shiwen severely blasted his palm on his chest using the move Leveling Storm 4 strokes, which fractured his ribs, and he spat a mouthful of blood and fell upside down on the ground. When their boss saw that the two brothers had been blasted away by Yi Shiwen, he quickly shouted, I will, but he couldn't finish the sentence, as in a flash, Yi Zaiwen's overwhelming punch blasted. Boom! Yi Zaiwen's punch blasted away the Zong boss and his body severely hit on the side of a tree and he fell unconscious. Chapter 87, Yi Shiwen, Come Out. Bingdao Sub-School's courtyard was located among the courtyards of the three major subcases. With an ice-cold look on his face, Chu Sun was standing outside, occasionally looking towards the room inside the courtyard. Beside him stood a blue-robed youth with a dignified appearance and smile on his face. He looked at Chu Sun and said, I heard that you were defeated by a country bumpkin. Chu Sun shot a cold glance at him. This blue-robe youth was called Gong Yao and like Chu Sun, he was also one of top disciples of Bingdao Sub-School, even stronger compared to him. Gee, this news has spread everywhere and has turned us into a laughing stock and now people are laughing at our Bingdao Sub-School. Our reputation has been thoroughly discredited. Do you want to sell us? Gong Yao laughed and said. This is not something you should joke about. Chu Sun said in a cold voice, I will do something about it myself. You can't do it yourself. Gong Yao smiled and said, because recently, I've heard that in the last 3 days, 30 people challenged him and no one could defeat him. After Yi Shiwen had defeated Chu Sun and the three Zongshi brothers, soon, a lot of disciples had been attracted to come and challenge Yi Shiwen hoping to beat him and earning fame in the process. For now, do not look for any trouble with Yi Shiwen. At this time, the door opened and came out a man with an appearance of more than 20 years old and an ice-cold facial expression, even more than Chu Sun's usual cold look. He was wearing dark blue clothes, tall stature, and possessed an overbearing aura. Why? Chu Sun asked without trying to be disrespectful in front of that man, because he was strongest of this year's disciples from Bingdao Sub-School, Shengguan Shuani, with an unfathomable cultivation and was ranked among the top 3 players from all the sub-schools. Assessment examination will be held in 2 days, so do not complicate the situation. Shengguan Shuani said in an indifferent voice, everyone's watching our actions, moreover, you may not be his match. Later, we will take our time and deal with him. Make a full preparation and perform outstandingly in the assessment, understood? Yes. In just 3 days of harvest, Yi Zaiwen's inventory now had 3,000 spirit stones. All of a sudden, gaining this many spirit stones was simply unimaginable even for the masters of Xiantian 4th or 5th stage. Because Yi Shiwen had defeated Chu Sun and Zongshi 3 brothers, he had become part of many rumors and his fame had become comparable to that of the well-known figures. Chu Sun was undoubtedly one of strongest top disciples of Bingdao Major Sub-School, and although the 3 Zongshi brothers were very shameless, but a lot of people could not help but admit that they were very powerful, especially when the 3 of them fought together, their total strength would be more than that of common top disciples. Among the disciples of these sub-schools, there were some so-called seed disciples. These seed disciples were the strongest in every respect and existed in each social stratum of disciples. There were seed disciples present among the outer disciples, inner disciples, and core disciples as well. Seed disciples were the most formidable group of people and the sub-schools would cultivate these seed disciples. Chu Sun and Zongshi 3 brothers were also the seed disciples. Yi Shiwen had previously defeated Wen Shiyang, but he was only a quasi-seed disciple, so defeating him was nothing compared to defeating Chun Sun and Zongshi brothers. There were countless famous disciples who wanted to challenge Yi Shiwen, but how could Yi Shiwen just accept so many challenges, so Yi Shiwen had set some rules. If they wanted to challenge him, they must hand over 100 spirit stones, otherwise they won't get a chance to fight him. Also, each day, he would accept challenges from not more than 10 people. This would directly eliminate those who just wanted to be famous but had no strength or money to challenge, so in just 3 days, Yi Zaiwen's total stock of spirit stones had suddenly gone up to more than 3,000 spirit stones. One could say that Yi Shiwen had suddenly become rich because even for a seed disciple like Chu Sun and other seeds disciples, 100 spirit stones were close to their net worth. Not to mention, for the ordinary disciples, especially those who had just entered into the Xiantian realm, having 10 spirit stones was not bad. Among the challengers during this period, there were some Seed's disciples as well, some of whom were even more powerful than Chu Sun, and it was very tough for Yi Xuan to defeat them. But Yi Xuan had a great harvest because these Seed's disciples were very powerful, with each having his own trump skill, and it was very difficult to deal with each of them, which was again a major harvest for Yi Zaiwen's battle experience. And after fighting with these strong people, Yi Zaiwen's various martial arts had been greatly tempered and he had become even more skilled at using them in fights. Now, everyone was aware of the fact that in the Qingfeng Mountain sub-school, there was such an outstanding figure. Yi Xuan naturally had gained a rank among the top Seed disciples, and almost everyone among the sub-school disciples had recognized his terrifying monstrous strength. Even if they hated it, they had to admit it. Yi Xuan had been able to feel a huge power surging in his body, and he felt as if he was standing on the threshold of a breakthrough which could happen at any time, and then he would finally break through to next stage and become a Xiantian second stage master. Once he entered into the Xiantian second stage, his strength would immediately have a rapid progress, and by that time, he would be able to contend with the elite masters, who were at the peak of Xiantian third stage and possessed 60% transformed Xiantian Jin Qi. Now Yi Xuan had enough spirit stones to support him through his breakthrough without any problem. So long as there were enough spirit stones, having a breakthrough would never be difficult for him. After entering into the main sect, the competition pressure had become greater. Boom! A majestic aura suddenly burst out in the courtyard of the Qingfeng Mountain sub-school and quickly spread in the surrounding area. It was a breakthrough into the Xiantian realm. There was a look of surprise on Yi Zaiwen's face, because this time, the only person in the Qingfeng Mountain sub-school who could have a breakthrough into the Xiantian realm was his sister, Yi Ruxue. While Yi Xuan was playing around outside with the challengers, Yi Ruxue had decided not to come out until her closed-door training would finish and she would break into the Xiantian realm. Yi Xuan was about to rush inside the courtyard and congratulate Yi Ruxue when suddenly, a hoarse roar resounded throughout the sky. Yi Xuan, come out. Chapter 88. Shaoyang elder Yi Xuan was about to rush inside the courtyard and congratulate Yi Ruxue when suddenly, a hoarse roar resounded throughout the sky. Yi Xuan, come out. The roar was instantly followed by a terrifying coercive aura which pressed down toward the courtyard. This pressure was so terrifying and sudden that it took Yi Xuan by surprise and overwhelmed him. Who? Yi Xuan shouted along with his Xiantian Jin Qi rolling out to confront that coercive aura. The collision between both of their Jin Qi directly produced a wind storm. But it was obvious that Yi Zaiwen's Xiantian Jin Qi was not a match for the incredible Jin Qi released by the other party, which came down all the way and completely crushed Yi Zaiwen's Jin Qi. Xiantian Jin Yuan. An astonished look flashed in Yi Zaiwen's eyes because this visitor was definitely not one of the disciples who had come to challenge him, as only the masters of Xiantian 6th stage or above could possess Xiantian Jin Yuan. When a Xiantian master would reach the peak of the Xiantian 5th stage, he would have transformed 100% of his Houtian Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi. At that time, if he would want to break into the Xiantian 6th stage, then it would occur only after a metamorphosis when the Xiantian Jin Qi would start transforming into Xiantian Jin Yuan, which was considered the second metamorphosis of life. Once the transformation was successful, the life expectancy from the original 200 years would also increase to more than 500 years. Xiantian 6th stage masters were a lot more powerful compared to the masters of Xiantian 5th stage, and only 1 in a dozen was able to have a qualitative change in their Jin Qi, which was necessary to step into the Xiantian 6th stage. Yi Yuan School main sect also classified this as a standard of division, where masters of Xiantian 6th stage or above could become core disciples and those below 6th stage could only become inner disciples. Although the difference was of only a single stage, but there was a difference of heaven and earth between the treatments of masters on these stages. Most of the elders were masters of Xiantian 6th stage who were originally the core disciples, with many of them, reaching the deadline age of nearly 500 years, trying to break through to the Zhendao realm. Since these core disciples had been unable to reach Zhendao realm, so they had decided to become elders for the sub-schools. But even so, all these elders were scary existences and were far stronger than ordinary disciples. Who are you? Yi Shuan came out of the courtyard and was surprised to find an old man, clad in black clothes, glaring angrily at him. Right at that time, Zhang Yang, Yi Feng, and Yi Ruxue, who had just broken through to the Xiantian realm, had all come out as well. "Are you Yi Shuan?" the old man asked in a cold voice with an angry look on his face. "I am," Yi Shuan said. "You little beast, you dared to injure the seed disciples of our Shaoyang sub-school," the black-clothed old man said in a cold voice. "Who are you calling little beast?" Yi Shuan asked. "Damn you, you little bastard," that black-clothed old man blurted out with his face flushed red with anger. "Ha ha ha." The disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain sub-school gave out an unbridled laughter. They had quickly understood that this black-clothed old man was an elder of Shaoyang sub-school. Even if he was an elder, but he belonged to the side of their sworn enemy, which was not going to change at this point of time as the enmity between the two sides had extended for so many years. The elder was certainly furious because Yi Shuan had severely injured Hu Cheng and there was no way for them to participate in the assessment. That was the reason why he had come to punish Yi Shuan. "You little beast, I will kill you." The black-clothed old man angrily tossed his sleeves and suddenly the air around him completely distorted. A big hand instantly congealed in the air made up of the Xiantian Jin Yuan, and for a master of Xiantian's 6th stage, this method of directly using the Xiantian Jin Yuan was very useful. Clang! Yi Shuan took out the long blade from the scabbard on his back and released a bright blade light which instantly filled the sky. At the moment, the appearance of Yi Shuan was shining like a god of war, with a solemn look on his face and his black hair swinging violently in the wind. The sword light completely transformed into a sharp blade made up of condensed Xiantian Jin Qi which immediately rushed towards that big hand and chopped down. Zzz. The tip of the blade chopped down on the big hand, issuing a loud zzz sound, followed by evolving the live picture of the creative concept of Missing Moon Beheader. As the creative concept of Missing Moon Beheader evolved out, it temporarily blocked the big hand by continuously regrouping the Xiantian Jin Qi and chopping down again and again on the big hand. Creative concept, how is this possible? He has actually evolved out a creative concept. The black-clothed old man looked unbelievably at Yi Shuan because he could not believe that Yi Shuan had already evolved out a creative concept, which was difficult to obtain, even for the inner disciples of the main sect. But even so, if he was not such an evildoer, then how could he have easily beaten the geniuses of his sub-school? Having thought of this, his eyes flashed with a killing intent. Such an evildoer genius, it was necessary to strangle him before he became hostile towards his sub-school, and if allowed to grow up, it would certainly not be a good thing for Shaoyang sub-school. Even if this time, he might put his Shaoyang sub-school in the danger of getting punished, he must strangle the danger in the cradle. In the sky, a descending moon intensely collided with the big hand which caused terrifying air explosions sending layer by layer ripples of air waves in all directions. The pressure was increasing on Yi Ziwen's body while his blade had fiercely collided with the big hand, but even after displaying the full essence of the creative concept of his blade technique, he had still been unable to block the incoming attack. Yi Shuan had been forced down by the virtue of superior strength of the old man. Yi Shuan was soon pressed down and his bones started to make crackling sound. His skeleton was facing an intense friction, although his body was insanely tough, just as strong as the steel, but when put under such a kind of terrifying coercion, it seemed as if his body would explode any time. "Old man, what are you doing?" Yi Shuan gritted his teeth and shouted in a voice filled with anger. This old guy was definitely not holding back, and it seemed as if he was going to kill Yi Shuan right there right then. That black-clothed simply ignored Yi Shuan and his big hand pressed down while fully destroying the live picture of creative concept. "Old man, in the future, I will certainly return the favor for today." Yi Shuan gritted his teeth and said with a lot of sweat crazily dripping down his face. 10 years, in just 10 years, he would be able to easily crush this old guy, but right now, his strength was not enough. This was the first time that Yi Shuan had thoroughly felt so helpless, craving for strength. He just needed enough strength so that a day like this would never come again where he would feel so helpless. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.